This is the 2021 Stampers Anonymous Christmas release. And as I mentioned, there are 5 stamp sets and a stencil, right? So we're gonna get into, I'm just gonna talk about the sets themselves and then go through and talk about the inspiring makes. So these of course are Cling red rubber. I love that because I love the detail of this. This of course, an instant favorite. This is the first one that I definitely needed to do. I'm gonna move these just off camera just so things don't get too confusing, all right? So this one, this is CMS 440. All of the stamp sets, of course, are labeled CMS, right? The Cling Mount set, Bold Tidings Mini. Now, this might look familiar for Bold Tidings. You're, wait a minute, I think I've seen this, but of course, this is the mini set. So what this is this is a set, I'm gonna just bring in my, let me bring in my stamp binder. I probably should have had this open, sorry. All right. So we'll go into CMS from, there's Snarky Cat Christmas, right? Haven't used it, sorry. You can tell the ones I've used. So here we go, Bold Tidings. So Bold Tidings that we did last year, we actually did Bold Tidings in 4 sets. These are giant stamps that are designed to fill a card front. And so many people loved them. I love them simply because, of course, the bold, but also it has a bit of distressing, a little bit of imperfection. So it's perfect for inking, for embossing, for doing all types of kind of even mixed media stamping, because you don't have to get that perfect imagery because the font itself has some little areas open, which I really liked. Now, the cool thing about these, obviously, is because they're big, they just took over an entire panel of something. Many people use them for cards. They made great card fronts. A lot of people, of course, use them. Some people did wrapping paper. Some people even did some home decor pieces because it even fit up like a 4x6 or 5x7 frame when you're working with it. And so I wanted to take these, so it took all 4 sets and combine them into one, right? So the new Bold Tidings Minis are all 4 of these larger sets shrunk down into one set. This is great because you can do smaller cards, you can do gift tags, you can do gift card holders, a lot of different things that we can do now with these same Tidings, but in a much smaller scale. And that's why I wanted to bring them side by side, because you can see they're significantly smaller, right? Not just a little bit, it's a lot. But I think that's the most important thing when it comes to having creative options. And this is something that I see people use, and it's one of my favorites because I like the fact that it does have that bold font to it. All right, so that is the new Bold Tidings Mini. Let me get this off, hold on, I'll close my binder, close it properly. There we are, because that's just what I do. Zip it up, tuck it in. Okay, move that out of the way. All right, so next up is CMS 441. Now this is called Holiday Things. And again, what I liked about this, these are all vintage engravings of the most charming little detailed images for the holidays. Now these could be very Christmassy, they could also be very wintry, but they have a great nostalgic vibe. So when we talk about etching and engraving, these are vintage illustrations. So they have all that great detail, that great sketch line, and that's what I love. If you look at the back of the rubber, right, you see all those little bumps. That's the joy of rubber stamps, right? So even something like this star is going to have solid and shading. It's going to stamp like that. So sometimes people don't really appreciate the quality of a rubber stamp. They're like, well, you know, I'd rather just have it in clear. But you can't achieve this effect and this detail with clear, with polymer. You just can't. You really need that rubber. And I think, especially because I love vintage so much, that it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to stamp vintage things with clear. It's just that's really why I like this, because of that wonderful detail. Now the holiday things, as I mentioned, because they're smaller scale, you can use them for backgrounds, and you're going to see makers did some great backgrounds with these by just repeating the pattern. These could also be focal points. They really work well together, and because of their scale, the concept here was a couple of years ago, we did this stamp set called Festive Overlay, and it was Paula's idea about taking a graphic like text and overlaying it over an image. And we did a set, it's called Festive Overlay, it's still available, but it was a different kind of font style, same idea from some vintage graphics. And the idea was that you would take a graphic and you can overlay it with text. And so when we did this mini set, I kind of wanted to go back and channel that on a much smaller scale. So the beauty of these is they are designed for that overlay effect, right? Meaning you can stamp one of the holiday things in a color, and then you can stamp the text or emboss it in a strong color like black. So here you could just use black soot archival, or you could do your embossing. So you would stamp your image either in a second generation, meaning you would just ink up the stamp, you could stamp it on one tag and then stamp it a second time so you get a faded look, or you can use a lighter color, you can work with oxide. But you can see here that the nice thing is you can either overlay it directly, which was the festive overlay concept initially, which was where you stamped directly over the top. I kind of like this off-register look myself because I really get to appreciate the detail. But of course, all these, you have more font options to mix and match. So it doesn't have to be Joy to the World. You could still do like Peace on Earth, I think right here. So if you want to do Peace on Earth for the globe, you can do a lot of things. You can have it overlay. You can also have the text maybe sitting underneath that icon. There's a lot of options depending on how you want to create with it. But I just wanted to show you that they are designed to be in scale or in proportion with these, because you're going to see a lot of makes where they're using both of these together, and that is what I love. Again, if you want to do just permanent stamping, you can do archival and archival. You can even go in and do watercolor. You can do your detailing. You can do all sorts of very cool things with either mini cards or gift tags, or even on a card front, because even if you have a large card panel like an A2, you can still just have a nice focal point for the season. And if you want to have different colors, like for example on the wreath, you could go in and use your ink pad, ink that in green, use the corner of that, ink that in red, or use your markers. So, Bold Tidings Mini, holiday things. All right, so far so good. Okay, moving right along to this next one. This one, you've seen a lot of sneak peeks, and if you haven't been seeing sneak peeks, you haven't been on Instagram, because the makers have been sharing sneak peeks, and I shared all of their sneak peeks yesterday. I always like to do that the day before the live, is I'll share all the sneaks that I've collected over the last week or so. This is Jolly Santa. I say to the makers every year, I really try to just find that Santa that's not a creeper, because sometimes they're a little creepy, but I really wanted something that always has a very cool vibe. And this year, I love him. I love his look. He's very jolly, very happy. Again, I don't draw any of my stamps. I license art from talented artists that know how to draw, and I love this illustrative look with all these sketch lines in here. It has a very linear vibe as well, just the way his eyes are done and his mouth, his mustache. I just think he's very cool. And I wanted to do him a pretty big scale. You can see he's a large scale Santa. You'll see in proportion when it comes to cards and tags how he fits on that. But then I paired him with all of my favorites as well, which are vintage elements. So these are components that came from true vintage things, right? So like from a vintage desktop calendar, or from a vintage piece of ephemera, or a vintage postal tag, or a vintage price tag. This actually, I love this. This came from a vintage telegram. It was like a Santa telegram. I love that. I love the typography of it. I love just how it's worded. This came from a vintage card. This came from a vintage advert. And so these, I think, really pair well with this Santa. Of course, you can use it together or separate, but you'll see many of the makers use these components in such unique ways. It's unbelievable. It really is. Love, love it. So that is Jolly Santa 442. All right. Next up, we have Winter Watercolor 2. So if something has a number by it, right, like Watercolor 2 or 3, it just means it's part of another series. Or for me as the designer, it's a way to connect something that I've done in the past. It doesn't mean it's another version of the same thing. It just means that it would work with its counterpart that has the same name, right? So this one, Winter Watercolor 2, that's 443. It actually works with Winter Watercolor, which was 354. So this was several years back, okay? And you can see when you have these set side by side that they have a very similar aesthetic, meaning it is a watercolor design. So these were taken from watercolor that we've scanned in, turned it into a solid image, and don't be fooled by the fact that it is a black image on here. Again, you'll see when I show you the makes what I mean by that. Because of their design and their bold lines, they stamp beautifully with inks, oxide, markers, or stamping with stain, where you could actually spray your ink sprays. You can stamp with your mica stains, where you would spray it onto a surface and actually use your stamp and dip it into that fluid stain and stamp it, because it's going to give you a watercolor vibe. Winter Watercolor 2, as you can see, a much bigger scale, a grander scale overall. For the most part, these pieces are unique. The only one that is similar is this pine where I added a little pine cone. It's kind of similar to this. These are great because you can do wreath building. You could add little sprigs of green here and there. These, of course, would now be more of a focal point, and you'll see from the card makers that you could just have a tree as a focal point. You could have holly or berries or pine or even this mistletoe kind of coming off of the side, and this wintry fern. What I like about stamps like this, especially just for anything that has kind of that nature organic vibe, is yes, they're Christmas, but they don't have to be. You could still use this for an outdoor woodland kind of card any time of the year. You can use this for spring berries. You can use this for like a fern leaf. You can ink these and utilize these any time of the year. These are great for spring, summer, fall, and winter, right? That's the cool thing about, of course, the watercolor set. I love it. Okay, so next and final is Cozy Christmas, right? So Cozy Christmas is really kind of a departure for me visually, but there was something about the sketch of this art that I loved. It definitely had a very homespun holiday, well, cozy vibe to it. So that's really why I wanted to create this set. It has two main components. So you're going to see it's this wonderful sketchy pine, an ornament, a little miniature Santa there, little candy cane and some berries. Such great detail and perfect for coloring. So for those that like to do coloring, whether it's watercolor or pencils or Copic or anything like that, it's just a great image to allow that. Where do you see the makers? There's a lot of makers that did that, that fancy no-line watercoloring as well. And then we have this, again, same artist, but now we've got just a different look with the ornaments. That cute snowman look with that little pot on his head. I love it. And you've got the broomstick, then of course the holly and the berries. And I love just the sketchy shadow. And then I paired this with just some small little Christmas sentiments, right? Half a holly jolly Christmas, in the air there's a feeling of Christmas, most wonderful time of the year. And these are much smaller typography that could either work in the corner of a card or they can go on gift tags. Now, don't be fooled by this set, because sometimes when there's an image that is designed big, and if you're familiar with the Glorious series where I did like Glorious Gatherings and Glorious Bouquet, those were giant stamps. Same thing with this, they're really big stamps, and you'll see some of the makes as well. If you look at the way the image is designed, because I did take the artist design, but I've reconfigured this. This original art was completely different. It had bigger elements. So I do kind of chop it up. And the significance of that is I wanted that if you were a maker, maybe you didn't want Santa and the candy cane, you could still ink it and you could stamp that portion on your card, right? So you have a beautiful sprig of pine and an ornament. You could have elements come in from the corner. Same thing like with the snowman. If you just stamp that, you've got a great little bit of holly and berries coming in. If you stamped over here, you've got pine coming in. So you've got images. So the way they're designed is that you could stamp on any corner of a card, or you could come in from the side, or you can just simply not ink an area, right? Any of these, and then you'll have just more of the greenery. So that's really what it's about when it comes to this set. Very cute. Love the vibe of it for sure. Love the sentiments in here. So they're just a lot of fun to work with. All right. So those are the sets. Let me take out this Winter Watercolor 1. So there we go. We've got Cozy Christmas, Winter Watercolor 2, we have Jolly Santa, we've got Holiday Things, and we've got Bold Tidings Mini. That's it. Those are the 5 sets that we have for Christmas. And then, of course, we have another shifter multi. Now, I demoed this for the Halloween Live, so if you haven't seen a shifter in action, definitely go check out the Stampers Anonymous Halloween release, because I demoed shifters a little bit more. I'm not going to spend the time to demo because we have so many makes, but I'll still just talk about what I like about shifters. So of course, these stencils are designed where when you purchase them, they have that little engraved, see that? A little line that's engraved. When you first get them, you want to paint them with black acrylic paint of some sort, wipe it off while the paint is wet, and that will get the black in the lines. They are not printed like this. They will not be printed like this because we don't want stencils to cost $25. So you can just put some paint on it, wipe it off. You're a maker, right? So that's going to mark it. Once you do that, you never have to do it again because the paint is permanent on there. And this is going to allow us to create some shifters. So the shifter multi, that whole series is where you're getting 3 stencils, regular size, but the pattern scale is smaller. So right now for the shifter multis, I'll grab them over here. Oh, I actually left Halloween hanging up over here. Well done, Tim. That's where the swatches are, right? So For Halloween, we did the Harlequin. We already have this in polka dots, and you can see the cool scale of that pattern. Shifters allow you, of course, to shift a stencil, and you can do multiple colors. So we have the stripes. So the stripes will start with just kind of the traditional, right? You can see the 3 sizes of this. It allows you to place a stencil down, go in with your ink. I'll just show you a visual here. There we go. Ink that. Once it's done, clean your stencil, shift it to where the outline, those black lines, cover up that previous color, and ink it a second time. What I like about certain patterns is that you can fade it in, right? So a stencil doesn't need to be edge to edge. You can have a great fade. It gives you a point that you can stamp an image or stamp text, or you can just cover the entire thing. What I will tell you about these stencils is that you can go edge to edge if you want. So here you can see traditional Christmas. This is kind of more candy stripe. You really need to do you. Some people like to have a very solid design. For me, you can see when I use my inks on this, I like to have a little bit more of a, I don't know, like a gradation of color where it's got some dark areas and some light areas. But if you want this blended solid, you can achieve that. What I will tell you on these specific stencils, because they have a perfect linear pattern and they have no crossbars, don't play the banjo, right? So when you're inking this, if you're using the stencil, you can't ink it like this. You can't do that circular motion or back and forth because you're going to play the banjo, right? Unless you have some type of spray or something on the back. So what I would suggest when you're using these is follow the orientation of the stencil itself. Meaning if you're going to ink, I prefer to use a blending tool for this because a brush, it just seems to get a little under that gap. There's not much of a gap in the shift. So sometimes if you use an ink brush, it may move this a little bit, but you can still try it. I normally just go in with a domed blending tool and I'll ink from the solid in. So I'll go this way. And then if I want this inked from here, I'll ink towards the center. And then once it's in the center, then you can just go back and forth to kind of fade that out. So it's completely up to you whether you want to just go in from one edge, you want to go in from both edges, or you can just go in and kind of randomly do that. You always want to clean your stencil or at least wipe it off in between colors because whatever color is left on here from the previous inking would transfer to the next color. If you're using reds and pinks, you can create some cool blends that way, but if you're using reds and greens, that would turn into brown, right? So that's just a tip, especially when you're using these, because you kind of have to give up those old habits of just kind of doing this, because even if this is taped down or whatever you do with your stencil, this kind of motion is still just going to get this little line just to shift slightly, and then you're going to get a wonky edge. So to keep that linear pattern, follow the groove of the stencil, right? So that is the Shifter Multi. That's the only stencil we did for Christmas. It's really the only one we need because there's so many other stencils currently in the line that are still in the line. So I've done everything from stars to words to holly to snowflake to sweaters. There's a bazillion stencils. So definitely go back and look at previous years because they are all still available because Stampers Anonymous, Cleveland, Ohio, doesn't retire anything. They keep all the same stencils, all the same stamps. So that is that. We're ready to go. Let's get into the makes, shall we? We shall. All right, I'm going to put this off to the side just so I have them, just in case. And then I'm going to go into cards. All right. Did I cover everything, Mario?
You did.
You do all right? Okay. Excellent. Oh, I see Art from the Heart. Hello, Ben. Ben, Art from the Heart is here. The UK, those in the UK always looking for stuff. He's a guy. He's our guy. He's got everything. All right. Bring on the jolliest topic, you say. You're right. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna share cards. Now, the cool thing about what the makers do is they get all the stamp sets, right? They can kind of mix and match. It's very interesting how some really stick to a single set. Some start mixing. So as I was sorting last night, that was kind of my thinking is where, okay, those makers that just used one specific set, and then as we start blending those in. So I'm just going to share a bunch of different cards. As always, following the live, whoops, that little tag. Let me grab this real quick. Oh, there we go. Following the live, all of these cards will be on timholtz.com. They will all be on the website, so you can check that out. There will be links to all the makers, so you can become familiar with the makers if you don't follow them. Again, go to the makers page on timholtz.com. All the makers are there. Follow them on their blogs, social media. Turn on notifications. Many of them will share tutorials throughout the season because we are still very early in the season. We're just launching product now. What's that?
I put the link in the chat.
Oh, thanks, Mario. So many makers, because we're early in the season, they won't be doing tutorials until we get closer into the season, but it is so important to show your support and shout out and love to them. As always, a shout out to Zoe Hillman, who goes into all of the blog posts, current and previous, and as makers share tutorials, she will update the photos on timholtz.com. So if you're able to hover over a maker image and it's clickable, that means it's going to take you somewhere to a tutorial. If it's not clickable, it means there's no tutorial for it, which is just eye candy, because, well, they don't have to do tutorials. They're doing it because out of the goodness of their heart, they want to. So we're going to kick this off. This is a card from Barbara. I really love how she used the bold Tidings Mini and just created this panel, nice slimline card, just creating the quadrants with those. I love just seeing the bold in there and how everything was just isolated with sewing. So many people are getting out that sewing machine and stitching and creating the panel, and then just using die cuts and pattern paper just to create a very cool focal point on there with all of the text. Add a little string, some little tiny bells from Ideology, and just a great festive card. So if you're looking and you think, okay, well, gosh, I like so many verses, this is a great way that you can use so many of them all at once. Now, even if you're not a card maker, you need to think of this as inspiration. The whole point of a live is to inspire you. So this could be some type of panel that goes on a scrapbook page. If you do any type of journaling and you want to do one of these statements and then just start writing all of your inspiration about what this statement feels for you. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can always take inspiration. The other thing I would recommend is jot down some notes while you're watching live. I know it's a whole party in the chat, snacks and all, but I think it's important that if you just jot down that maker's name when I say it the first time, you can see who that is and you can remember to go back and check that out, because, well, after 100 plus makes, is going to get confusing. So this one's from Barbara. And there's so many different ideas. Cassie created this, just a simple little wood tag, but a very cute idea for a package or an ornament, just to show you how charming these Bold Tidings Minis fit on a little tag. So again, this is a wooden tag, but this could be chipboard, this could be paper, using any of your detail elements. It could be vintage collage paper. This is just embossed in red. But how adorable is that? You could sit and just make a bunch of gift tags sitting in front of the TV one night watching your favorite show, turn on a holiday show, maybe you watch Hallmark Channel, I'm not sure, but you can sit there and create these ideas with ease. That's the whole point of a live, is just to kind of give you the spark of the ideas. So Colbert created this one. I think it's great just to show, again, that in a focal point, but also show how you can take other elements and create a card. So here we've got the Harlequin. That was from Halloween, right? So just because it's a previous release doesn't mean that you can't use it any other time of the year. Get out your favorite Sizzix die cuts. You can do paper punches, you can do ephemera, and you can create just a card using that stamp as a focal point. And I like the color palette of this too. It doesn't always have to be red and green. I love just seeing that little splash of red and more of an organic palette. So many people use tiny bells. It's great. So many people. And as always, every maker has just a different aesthetic when it comes to creating. So Vicky created this card. She's definitely into more of an industrial vibe. And so I love, of course, well, you know me, I love brown and I love rust. This is layered with some rusty screen. So this is actually metal screen that's in here. You can see this background that's got this great scratch, like using a little scratchy tool on some cardstock. I love seeing that off-register stamping. So this, of course, is taking that, stamping it once in white, and then stamping it a second time, shifting it ever so slightly, and then stamping again in black. It creates such a cool pop. You can also go in with just a gel pen if you're really good at that. You can do a gel pen. She might have done just a pen work here. So really, whatever you want to create, you can either do the offset stamping or just go in and add that little white pen accent. But again, it's all about your palette. What palette moves you? You can see there's the stripes in the back, that stencil. It's really nice that you can create whatever scale stripes you want for a background by having that shifter multi. And then, of course, some Ideology hardware heads. It just creates just a beautiful, very sophisticated Christmas, right? But very rugged, I think. It's got a great outdoors feel. Okay, moving right along. Now we're going to start getting into kind of the mixes. I think I'm going to put this basket right off to the side and I'll just pick them up one by one. That'll make it easier for me. So Cassie created this card. Again, now you can see where she's just started taking that same tag idea. And for those that don't know what to do with a tag could go on a card. You don't need to do much else to a card. And we get asked this probably more than I can even wrap my head around. And that's just seeing that. I agree, Paula. Paula said she loved that card, Vicky. I agree. It's just a beautiful, I love all the cards. So this, Cassie's showing like, okay, make a tag. And maybe you're going to make a bunch of tags. But then you think, well, wait a minute. I'm not going to put it on a gift. I don't want to just give someone a little tag. Well, you can get out your card bases. You can get out your favorite pattern papers, do a foundation for that, and stick that little tag on as the focal point. Done. Simple, 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 done. You can go in with some ideology. You can add those little clipping stickers. You can take your favorite decorative tapes. It's very easy to achieve that look. Of course, your background stamps, so if you don't have a lot of pattern paper, get out those background stamps like she did here and create a beautiful plaid background, do a little watercolor inking, stitching, it's done, right? So just a great idea just to share like how you can incorporate the same thing. Cassie did this one as well. So same concept, even if you're not using the tag, maybe you have the decal trimmer, right? If you have the tonic decal trimmer, 'tis the season, my friends, get that out. It creates beautiful patterns, so you can either do the decal trimmer. If you have the decal dies from Sizzix, you can do that as well. It just depends on how you want to get your decal on. But I like the fact of just taking that little sentiment and building the layers. And you can see in the back, there he is, right? That little Santa from Holiday Things. You just see him in the background. So he can either be in the background. You'll see from some cards that those minis are also in the foreground. This is the time to use all the things, right? All the things that we've gathered. Maybe you've collected a lot of stuff. Maybe you have things that you haven't used from previous years. This is the time, right? Get all those things out. All right. So Joy created this card. I love the idea, again, not only of blocking, but using those dies, right? I love the stacked tile dies I did with Sizzix because you get multiples of the same shape. So here you can take a card panel, you get 5 each of the same shape in all different nested sizes. So here you can cut out 3 windows right from a card panel, go in and utilize those stamps, right? So we're using, again, just kind of seeing how both of those work together. They don't have to be layered. This could be your image, right? So you could take just the small image here, then you could take the text and you could block it that way. And then if you look in the background, that's just kind of carried throughout, right? Add a little foam, little dimension. There you go. Beautiful. What did I say? From flat to fab, I think. Yes. Well, I don't know if I did. If not, that's what I'm saying this time. So just again, great idea how those stamps, you can use them together or separate. So maybe you just like the images, maybe you like the text, or you like bold. All right. So this card, amazing card from Emma. I can always tell because it takes 2 hands to hold an Emma card, and I love that. I do. I love that she continues to just make massive cards. And the cool thing, of course, it just gives you so much area to work with. This idea is what I just absolutely fell in love with. Look how she took the little globe from Holiday Things, masked it off, and have the Santa kind of look like leaning on the globe as a desk and kind of checking his list. How I loved it. Really. That whole idea right there was just, that was everything to me. Actually gave me goosies when I saw it. It was like so brilliant just to use that and create a scene of just overlapping that. I loved it. And then we have, of course, a little jingle all the way. And then if you look at the background, remember I said that a lot of times you can take that small little element, even though it's small, and you can make a background pattern to whatever is going to work with what it is you want to create. So charming. We've got some Ideology velvet trim. So nice to just put flat on a card. You're going to see the velvet trim a lot. The velvet trim from Ideology is year-round, but there's colors that will work, of course, for every season. And then some tiny bells that are painted red and a little pin. But look at all the detail, right? From the stitching, the layering. I love these die cuts. These are old school die cuts, right? These stitched ovals. I love the stitch frames. We did them in ovals, rectangles, but any kind of stitch die or pinked edge die, anything that you want to do, get out all those things and play. Even if they're just decorative scissors, it does add a whole different effect or touch to your card, right? Unreal. Very cool. Now, if simple card making is not your jam, maybe you want to just continue into that mixed media realm where you're like, look, I am not a card maker. Well, Stacy's got you covered because you can still take stamps, pair them with your favorite die cuts, your favorite punches, your favorite Ideology. This happens to be an etc. tag. Do all of your icy, grungy layers. Take your paper dolls, take your little bit of batting. I mean, there's so many layers of sparkly goodness on here. I mean, look at that. Little icicle in there, there's a little transparency. But then you can see here the stamps, right? Dashing Through the Snow, and then pairing it up with older stamp releases. I thought this was so good. This was one of my favorites. This was from, I don't know the set. Well, Stampers Anonymous is here. They can look it up. But this is the one that I think came with the scenes. And I love the typography. I know it's a favorite of Stacy's as well. But see, layering old and new, both Dashing Through the Snow, I thought that was just very clever, very brilliant. And then just even down to the idea of taking any of your little die cut scraps and tying it on, right? So this is just stitched on there and then using paper as a charm, right? Isn't that beautiful? So like a tag like this, let's say you're doing a holiday gathering or a party with friends, or you just want to send just something that can be displayed. I always think that when it comes to like an etc. tag, because it's really thick, right? This could be something that could be displayed. It could go in a frame. It could hang off of a wreath. Just so many ways that you could take stamps to a whole nother level and dimension. And of course, utilize all of your favorite ththings, right? Maybe you're more into die cutting and you don't just do stamped cards. There's always inspiration, right? Look at there's all the layers. Look at that. Yep, that's what it's about. The other thing that it's about is what I always say, you do you. Am I right, Sharon? Color, beautiful, rainbow. Love the idea that for a holiday card, you do you. If you love splashes of color, you don't have to get into the winter blues and purples. You don't have to get in the traditional reds and greens. You do the way you want to do it. And you can see here on the back, I love seeing those snowflakes embossed in there. I'm guessing that's a little of that icicle, right? That distress crackle paste just kind of smeared on there. That new icicle that we did for the season. Love all the mica. So can you see how this card just shimmers? Because the background is done with the mica stain. So that's giving it that whole reflective, shimmery look. And then of course, when you add the icicle on top, it's just, it electrifies it. Love seeing not only the stamp background, that mini bold Tidings, but then the die cuts, right? Give it a dimension. Use what you have. You don't have to design by brand. Some makers just like make by brand. They're like, I am a purist. If I'm going to stamp, I'm only going to use stamps, or I'm only going to do die cuts. And we kind of forget that it's like, well, hold on. If we worked on some background panels, we've die cut a bunch of stuff, because remember, I'll go back to my whole compartmental thinking, right, where people probably get annoyed by it. But this thing, you can do all your backgrounds. You can sit and die cut snowflakes for an entire day and have a heap of them. You can simply go in and stamp and emboss verses. Those are the days where you just are in a creative rut, where you're like, I don't have any spark, but you've got the energy or the desire to go into your craft space and do something. Those components easily come together to form finished cards, right? That's what it's all about. Okay, so this next one, I hope I didn't mess it up, but we'll see. I didn't even know until I just started to grab this, and I'm like, oh, this has some movement, because Joy created this. Oh, Joy, what a perfect stamp you used for your card. So love seeing Joy to the World used as a background. So stamps are life, you guys. It's a tool. It's the way that you can just take that, use whatever color palette you want a background stamp because you love what it says, go for it. But this is suspended. I didn't know if I needed to wind this thing up. I didn't open it yet, but hopefully it still is going to do it. If not, I'm going to need a little tutorial on what to do. But this, I think, opens, and then I'll see. What am I supposed to do with this? Am I supposed to like wind it up? I've seen this done before, but I'm not a paper mechanic. I'm going to try. I think you wind it, right? Let's see. I'm sure the chat will just blow up and go, yes, yes, wind. I don't know how many times I'm supposed to do it. Maybe it's not even supposed to be the right way. But I know you like twist that little thread thing, and then when you open it, it's supposed to like spin. Oh, there we go. Look at that. See, I'm fascinated by that sort of stuff. I would want it like on an auto-rotative motor thing.
You'd want it on a remote control.
I would. But I love that. So just having that suspended piece, what a cute card, Joy. You know I love paper mechanics. I do. I don't have the patience for it, but I love it. Very cool. But this, again, the splattering, and look how it just has a little glossy accents over that one. You could do glossy accents. You could do embossing powder. You can do glitter. You could do whatever you want just to kind of isolate one. So even if it's a background, you can call out one as your focal message on that. Adorable. Cute. Okay. Moving on. Barbara created this card. Love this big square card. Cards don't have to be a specific shape and size. I know that, you know, as an industry, we talk about standard from A2 and slimline and I don't know, 4, but I don't even know what half of them are. It's just a card. To me, a card is like whatever my background is, that's going to be the size of card. And then you just have to figure out the envelope size. But you know, then Tifa can you just make an envelope, right? So I think for cards, and most of the time people don't even, you're not so bothered that an envelope is the actual perfect size. You could do a mailer or anything. I love this big square card because it really highlights this beautiful background. Again, you're going to see a lot of different die cuts used just to add that beautiful frame that Barbara did. I love the little bit of crinkle ribbon, the snowflake, and then that Merry Christmas to You, that's from the Jolly Santa set, right? So again, mixing and matching your sets. If something really catches your eye, there's a lot of favorite typography from some of the vintage greetings that I've done. I love the look of that. It's so nostalgic. And the color palette, beautiful. I love seeing that blue with those pops of red in that card. Great layer, great dimension, a great way to just work on backgrounds and work on focal point. All right, this one I could just tell just by looking at it. This is from Alberto. Seeing this because I always have to look at it more than once and go, okay, where's the stamp? So here, that's going to be no line coloring. That's the deer from Holiday Things. That's the sentiment from Cozy Christmas. The rest, drawn by Alberto, right? Not a stamp for an ornament, a bow, but very clever. If you have that ability to draw and illustrate and color, I think it's really wonderful that you can take an engraving and use it as a foundation to go in and do all of your coloring and illustrative work. I do not possess this talent at all, but I completely appreciate those that do, right? And I know people are going to say now, oh, you need an ornament stamp. No, I won't. But it's very cool. I love the idea that let's just say you can't draw. This is when I look at something, I'm like, okay, I could never do that. But what I ultimately did was say, okay, I could stamp this, I could color it, not as well as he colored it, but I could color this. I can't draw an ornament, but I can certainly die cut a circle, right, from my card. I can tie a piece of ribbon to look like a bow, and I can certainly add some sort of metal element to the top to mimic this idea. And that's the important thing to understand when it comes to creating cards, that you need to do what you love to do and not take an idea and completely discard it just because how that maker used it isn't anything. There's always something to gain. There's always inspiration from everybody's makes. It's just about tapping into it to see like, okay, how could I take that? And this is when I say, like, find something nice to say. Look for something creative in everything you do. Just beautiful. I mean, look at that shading. Come on. If you're into dimensional elements, Nico created this. I think it's just a very cute trinket tin. It's using old school Sizzix dies, but then taking your stamps, right? Make a wonderful little shrine in there. You can see there's another mini stamp in there, some ideology, but this is cute. It's just a great little piece that can sit up on a desk, right? If you wanted to, you could pop some tiny lights back there, but I like just that whole little scene just using stamps because, again, stamps could be anything. They could be a card. They could be a decor piece. They could be a gift tag. If you love to fussy cut, you can create your own little scenes with that. Adding in, look at that. Little chunky snowy ground. Just a beautiful little winter scene inside a tin. If you don't have a trinket tin, you could have any kind of tin or a box or anything to create a great look. I love that the makers just did whatever it was that inspired them to create, right? Just to take that and say, okay, I'm going to think of something different. Think outside the box. So again, a shout out to the makers for always doing that, right? Thinking outside the box. So when we say thinking outside the box, well, how about an envelope? So Tifa created this. This just, I saw it last night. It just brought a huge smile to my face because I have a department store, right? Holtz's department store. Look at the windows in here. So this, love the work, you know, the envelopes that, and if you don't follow Natifa, like I know so many of their makers, like the love that goes on between the makers and seeing this is very cool. Gel pen work, a lot of gel pen work because we know when we see that highlight there, but you can see how she just detailed those trees, right? With the little ornaments, the lights, the garland, the wreath, and then inside, because there was a little note, you know that, hello friend, tiny lights for the win. The windows light up with tiny lights, right? So she's got all those lights just kind of outlined. So the department store window, look at that, lights up. So even this concept, so let's just say you're not into making envelopes. You can do this in a frame, in a box. You can put your friend's name on there. You can do anything you want, but the idea is there. Brilliant with the stencils in the back. So you can see some pattern paper, some textured stencils. There's a little even abandoned paper back there. I love that shattered glass. It's very department store-ish, isn't it? Seeing that abandoned paper, because I'm like, look at that. That's very cool. I'm like, oh wait, that's abandoned, right? Beautiful. Absolutely charming to create that. So just to every little detail, right? Trim tape. Look at that. Beautiful. So I love it. It's a masterpiece. Just fun to see how the ideas spark from a substrate, right? And people likes to do envelopes. People like to do cards. You can still take those and apply them however. Very cute. Then this one, it took me a minute. It's going to be no surprise to many. Anita created this. I'm going to start back here just so you can really take it in its scale of grandeur, and then I'll pick it up and we'll look at it a little bit closer. You can see in the background the stripes, again, using the stencil. So even on something this long, remember if you're inking in halfway, then you could take the stencil, ink in halfway, they'll meet in the middle. So you can still use those stencils even for something slimline like this. But then if you look at the tree and what it's created with, right? It's created with all of the things, right? So I'm going to bring that set back in because you have to like really start looking at it now. The star, the pine cone, that little branch here, the juniper branch, there's the deer, Santa, the snowflake, the globe, the wreath, the sled that he's standing on, the holly, the other pine branch, the candle, and then all this little filler, just utilizing all these greens and stamping and then making a tree out of all the holiday things. And then of course, yep, there's gonna be some stickles on there. Stickles, a little glossy accents. But how clever is that just to stack that and build a tree? Yeah, that's a lot of stamping, a lot of masking, a lot of layering, but I would imagine that once you create your masks for this, it could be repetition, right? Once you kind of figured out your footprint, so to speak, you can just do these very systematically and build those. But so much great detail and fun in just how, like I said, how the makers utilize a stamp set. Because when I picked this up, I'm like, whoa, look at all those images. And then, you know, when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a tree, right? It's a tree out of things. Very cool, right? Very, very cool. I love the idea. Yeah, and that glowy candle just makes me happy. Right, little spark, happy on the inside. Okay, unbelievable, right? I mean, Anita, the stamping, geez Louise, so much stamping. All right, moving on. Yeah, someone said I thought of that as soon as I saw the card. See, that's the thing, you know, the more you watch the lives, the more you are going to recognize the maker. That's the beauty of when you guys are watching these lives, getting to know the makers. You get to see the content that they share all the time that you probably would miss out on normally. So I think that's great. So this, I'm just going to share this basket. This, I was speechless. I said this to Mario last night when I set this up, that I've made comments every single time I do a live that there are some makers that will take an idea and they'll make multiples of for live. They never have to do that, right? The makers have a very small commitment and all of them go above and beyond every single time. This time though, for Christmas, I could not believe how many makers made multiples. I mean, I thank you guys for doing that. It made me so happy on the inside because I think, especially at Christmas time, we have the best intentions of hand making things. And then reality comes and we make every excuse why we don't have time to do it anymore. And that just needs to stop because you have to make time to make. It brings you joy. And the same time you have to watch these lives, you could be making, right? So I'm just going to take you through and just show you. I'll just bring all these in because I want to show you. Just show you all the different ideas that the makers have created. So Juliana created this set of tags, right? So you could either die cut tags, you could do store-bought tags, you can do whatever. But this is showing that if you don't have a lot of time to make something really in-depth, that these ideas hopefully will remind you to like kind of do that. Yeah, Jen says get cracking on Christmas all year long. She does that. She gets people really inspired to start Christmas and work on it all year long. And that's what this is. You could say, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to die cut my tags, or I'm just going to go buy tags. These happen to be die cut because they don't have the hole. But then you can then do all of your detail work. Okay, I'm going to do my stamping. So take that little snowflake, stamp it in some white picket fence to get a nice little subtle background using white distress ink or any white ink that you have. Then you can go in and you can stamp your tidings, do different colors, kind of mix it up. The nice thing about stamping in white is you do get that little kind of residual fade in there. If you didn't want that, You can stamp in something more opaque. Acrylic paint's a bit messy, but you can do embossing. And then any of your trinkets, right? Maybe you've got some ribbon. Maybe you've got these adorable little story sticks from years past in ideology. We don't have these anymore, but I love them because they're so tiny for these. Take out your favorite die cuts. But again, take an idea and replicate it. And this could all be done in stages where you're like, okay, tonight I have an hour. Cool, I'm die cutting tags. Then the next night you have an hour. Great, I'm doing backgrounds. And you will get them done. You'll have a heap of stuff to make. So just keep that in mind. I put all these in cello bags so I can keep all the ideas together, right? This is where you want to write down those makers' names so you'll be able to go back and see what they do. So Yuko created this, again, a series of cards. Same idea, totally different. Why? Totally different stencils, totally different mica stain, beautiful, right? I see a little bit of that frosted juniper. It gives me chills. Using texture paste, and then this is using the impress lit. So the switch lit, sorry, too many lits in the Sizzix world, but this is a switch lit, which is really an impress lit that you can switch out. So this is the seal that allows you to change the decorative edge of that circle. So it embosses those little dots and it cuts. So you can do a straight edge, a pinked edge, a scalloped edge. But what a great foundation for these mini bold tidings. I love this Yuko. So again, if you love inky backgrounds using your mica stain, look at the stencils. There's a little stars. There are the trees. This also is a Sizzix die. I think this is maybe from either Funky or I think this is from Funky Festive, I think. Maybe. I could be wrong. I don't remember. And then you see the snowflakes, but look at that. See, look at that mica stain. Oh, I'm telling you, all year long, guys. I've been reading. Many people are stocking up, and it makes me happy, not because it's like, oh, they're buying. No, I'm not that guy. It's me saying, yes, you're going to be so happy next year, and not the one that says, what do you mean I can't buy this in March? Well, but you can use it now because you have it. But how beautiful are those cards, right? Again, compartmental making, and you can create beautiful cards just using those components and just stunning, using your favorite things. I do love that seal. I agree, Allison. She said great use of the seal. I thought the same thing. It was really great. All right. Then we're going to take our next set. I got to set this down. Colbert created these. So let's say you need to make a bunch of quick things and you're like, look, I don't have time for inky backgrounds and stencil and this. You can still do that. Now we're going into like a craft tag that could be purchased. Again, you're still doing that overlay stamping, just using your favorite colors of inks, taking your die cuts or punches, doing a stitched edge, and you're done, right? This happens to be a die cut, but you could, because you could just tell it's a die. But if you didn't want to do a die cut, you could easily go and purchase tags and create gift tags. So that's what I wanted to share with these ideas, is that they could be as detailed or as simple as you want. Do a little bit of your favorite glitter, your favorite grit paste, because that's what that is. Splatter some mica stain. So see just that little splatter of it, even if you don't want to spray, adds a great detail. So you're just looking for some sort of cool decorative touch. Get yourself a splatter brush. Take some of that mica stain and splatter your stuff with mica stain. I'll get the light to cooperate. See? So you can see that gives it a great wintry vibe. It's all ideas, guys. All ideas. All right. These next cards from Kath, again, prove, maybe this has an official size name. I don't know, but it just proved that like the size or shape of a card is very cool. Now, I'll be honest, when I picked these up, I'm like, holy moly, these are hefty. These have a really good feel to them. And then I went to open it and I was like, oh, she glued it shut. No, she didn't. Come on, Captain Obvious. She just created a card that has a wonderful vertical flip. I loved it. So you can see, again, utilizing metallic, using wonderful metallics in the background. I love the little splattering. Feels like embossing powder. Like maybe she just sprinkled some embossing powder and did some heating on there. But look at all of these beautiful cards that Kath did. So wintry, so charming. And you see how these things are used differently, right? So this is just standing on top. This snowflake is still in the background. Joy to the world, but then the globe is also part of the background. So many ideas for using both of those sets together, right? So you've got the pine cone in the background for that color vibe, and then you've got that pine branch in the top. See? How wonderful are these cards? Oh, I love that. And you can see, so that splattering that you see of like the red and the green that's catching the light, that's mica stain, you guys. this metallic here, this is actually embossing powder. Can you see that? It's definitely textured, right? So maybe, I'm not sure. One thing I am sure of is Kath is going to share her tips and tricks because she always does. She is like, I don't know, she blogs like unlike anyone that we know, but this could be resist, this could be splattered. But again, look at the idea for creating that card. And maybe this is a size because you're going to send photos, or maybe you send a Christmas letter, or maybe you want to include a gift card. All perfect sizes, but it's just I like the whole look and feel of this card series, right? Stunning. Beautiful. Love that splash for sure. And if you're into foiling, these would be great for foiling as well. So many different things. Hey Mario, can you do me a favor? Can you grab just one of the empty Starbucks cups with the lid and the straw, please? Thanks. One of mine? Thanks. Next up, here's another set that Yuko created. So many different looks, but I mean, see what I mean? When I said they make multiples, it's like, okay, you want multiples? There you go. Step back, get ready. So here you can see these have a completely different vibe, a great little woodland vibe to these. Great little mini cards just done on the craft heavy stock. So we've got that 130-pound craft, makes for a great card foundation. This, of course, this background, this is lumber. Thanks. This is lumber embossing folder because you can see it's more textured, but you can still use wood grain cardstock if you want, and then just taking your inky backgrounds and cutting them down. This is a great way that you can yield a lot from your inky backgrounds, right? If you don't utilize the entire panel as your card, but you just use that as the focal point, but you can see the wonderful stamping and embossing. Of course, you're going to want to do that before you run it through your folder, right? So you would stamp and emboss on the smooth paper and then run it through your embossing folder to get that texture. Love the little splattering of that glitter. See? Very cool. And these are all done. So if you look at the image, I'll try to hold this up. So these are done in frosted crystal, right? So the distressed frosted crystal embossing powder, see how it gives it like a little bit of a sparkle? It's frosted, so it's not glittery, but you can definitely tell that it's not just stamped flat, right? So it's got that great little detail. And that's the nice kind of addition to that layer. Just gives it something cool. Aren't these cards beautiful? Absolutely love them. Really great. Look at that, with the mica stain in the back. See? So many wonderful ideas. Ideas. All these done with the different colors of mica stain. So, doing backgrounds, doing wood grain, doing stamping and embossing. Great series of cards. And frosted crystal, yeah. Frosted crystal doesn't have to be the chalkboard powder. It's just a great embossing powder because it kind of, I don't want to say it dulls the black, but it kind of does. It puts a frosted crystal over the top of it, but it still gives it that dimensional and texture to create a nostalgic vibe instead of shiny black embossing powder that really pops from the surface. So great cards, Yuko. Love them. So these, that's why I asked Mario for a cup. So Vicky created these. So if you have coffee-loving friends, creating these are just those little drink sleeves that you can create, right? You can put it around your favorite cup, right? So whether you do a reusable cup, whatever it is that you use, or even if you were just going to get your friend's coffee and then you put this around the coffee that they made, I think it's absolutely charming just to take some corrugate and creating this, or you can repurpose ones that you might have, but just adding some paint or gesso, some stamps, layering that, you can see they're all just very clever, very charming. So this is just, especially for people that love coffee, just a great idea to even just to gift to someone, right? So let's say you're just going to give them this and you're going to gift them a Starbucks card. They could put this on their coffee, whether they're drinking it at home or whatever it is. You know they're going to want to switch it out because it's going to make them smile for the season. It's the little things, guys. All those great ideas of incorporating stamps and embellishments into what you make. Great idea. Thanks, Mario. All right. Then we have this huge bag of tags that Stacy created. Look at all these. Like, you could tell she was having a good time. I could tell she's having a good time because this is like, you know, when you have that idea and you just can't stop? Well, that's really what this is. The great thing about these tags, again, they have that same little vertical opening. So even if you just don't want to do a tag because maybe you do want to put a gift card or you want to write a message, keep in mind that you can still do front and back, or you can just fold your paper strips and you have this. Let me just show you some of the detail. I did talk to Stacy last night. I was texting her. I'm like, okay, I'm sure people are going to ask, so I want to ask you, are you going to do a tutorial on this? Yes, she's going to blog this, because if you look closely at the bold, she did a stamping technique, where you stamp a pattern on a solid. So this is done using the plaid, where you ink up the plaid and you stamp on the text before you actually stamp the text. So you'll see here that the pattern, see there's actually a plaid inside that bold. It's a great technique. There's the plaid that she'd been used on the background. And then this one, that little sparkle, she actually, because I couldn't believe this, she got frosted crystal to act as an adhesive for rock candy. So she used frosted crystal embossing powder, heated up, added some glitter, and got it to stick. Again, she's going to share all the how-tos and tips and tricks on her blog post. But yeah, all of these have that wonderful plaid stamping, great background, little stitching details, right? Little die cuts. Some of these backgrounds have texture paste. That's another reminder, not everything has to be matchy-matchy, right? If you've got texture paste background, maybe you're doing inky backgrounds, maybe you just want to kind of find your groove. But all of these have a wonderful kind of woodland vibe with the plaid and the green, and of course that little sparkle. Well, that's everything, right? Distressed rock candy, little glitter duster for the win right there, right? You can always need a little bit of rock candy in your life, because rock candy glitter, why I love distressed rock candy glitter, it is completely translucent. So it doesn't have the iridescence or holographic factors that most clear glitters have. This is just completely clear, and because of all the different particle sizes in there, that's what makes it twinkle like sugar or diamonds, because it's not just one size glitter, it's 5 different sizes. Just great. So many tags. I'm like, oh, I'm set. My Christmas cards. No, we'll send these back. But I said to Mario, I'm like, man, she already did that. It's great. This next bundle of Christmas cards, Tammy B created these. Love the look of this. Again, even if you like to do a traditional card, don't underestimate the power of a mini bold, right? Or something small, because it still packs a punch depending on how you orientate the card. So here, just using different inks, using different stamps, putting that in there, adding some stitching, all those layers, really charming in there, right? So you can see all of these papers. These are papers that she's created with inks, right? So you can see the inking, stamping, stitching. This has a little texture on there. Oh, this one does. Feels a little textured. I like that. Kind of feels almost flocked. Love this one. Beautiful, beautiful background. Love that background stamp. So see, whatever your palette is, the power of stamps. You can make whatever designs and pattern paper using your favorite inks, your sprays, your stamps, your stencils. You do you. And then you can take those elements and put them to use as cards. So this is a great use, especially if you're cutting, let's say you're doing a big background and you were cutting that red to do this panel. Well, then you have another piece to do another card, and you can start mixing and matching. So as you're creating backgrounds, it is a great way that you can take all your background papers and start layering them up on different cards and mixing and matching. I also love the idea of using these. They don't have to be an overlay. Like I said, they can still just be used independently if you want. Great cards, Tammy. Super fun. All right. Then we have this charming little box. Well, you know me. I mean, who doesn't want a little box, brown paper packages tied up with string? Well, it's my favorite thing. So Zoe created this. I love this. It's really charming. So this box, this is made out of paper. This is the curio box. This is a die from Sizzix that I did. You can see, don't we love that little telegram? So good. And then instead of using the big Santa that came with this stamp, remember, you can mix and match. She used that Santa from Holiday Things, stamped the whole box, because of course this is a die cut, so you can do all your stamping first and then die cut it. I get to open this up. I already peeked, I'm not gonna lie. I retied it. That was challenging to kind of do that, right? But inside, okay, you ready? Look at these. Hello, adorable. Little tiny cards with little envelopes. Little cards with envelopes, and using the Ideology tiny clips to clip them together. So remember how I was talking about that as a maker, sometimes you just don't realize that what we do is really a superpower. Not everybody has the desire to create and do things. And so you often think like, oh, I need to give them something finished, a finished card. But just making them a set of cards or note cards or even gift cards to gift to someone is wonderful, because they can then pass it on, right? Just there you go. Look at that. I want to say pay it forward, but it's really not that. It's just kind of sharing that creative love. So you look inside the box. This is all done with that shifter just to create that wonderful peppermint. We've got special delivery. So the whole thing about, you know, creating stuff and just sharing your creativity. Yes, there's pay it forward from the inspiration level from maker to maker, but maker to someone that doesn't is really a valued gift. So these you can see are using all of the wonderful little holiday things. You can unclip this, and then you can see that each card, besides that edge stitching, like I can't even sew in a straight line. I mean, I don't mind sewing, but I can't sew in a straight line, let alone on the edge. That's a little bit on the edge right there. But then the envelopes, even inside, look at that, little stenciled inside, because this is an old school Sizzix die of that mini envelope. I think I need to bring this one back. It's very cute because, you know, it die cuts it, and then you can go in and use your stamps or stencils. But the whole little series is done just adding some stamps, some little splattering, a little watercolor. So of course this uses the sentiments from Cozy Christmas, because it does. It definitely gives it more of a cozy vibe. And each one has its envelope, special delivery, and of course that stenciling inside. So very cute to pair those holiday things with the text from Cozy Christmas. I mean, if you kind of think about all the different things used, this is taking, you know, that from Jolly Santa, as well as the special delivery in these elements. And then we've got the holiday things, and then we've got the text from Cozy Christmas. So you still can combine and mix and match for your ideas. And yeah, you can go buy boxes if you don't want to build a box, but if you have a box die, how perfect is that just to add those elements to it? Really charming. I love the details of that for sure. Very cute. Very cute. Love those little clips. Oh, Mari's ready for the handoff. Nice. Just hand that right off to you. There you go. Beautiful make, Zoe. Love it. All right. Let's real quick do a glitter sweep. There we go.
Glitter sweep.
I have to do a glitter sweep because I see it there. Okay. We interrupt this broadcast for a glitter sweep. Okay, moving right along. Next, we are going to get into Jolly. And you can tell from this entire basket of makes the joy of Jolly Santa, because man, cards are just, they're unbelievable. So Emma created this card. Look at him. Look at how happy he is, and just so sparkly. There's so many different takes on this stamp set. Wait till you guys see. I'm gonna go through all of them, just blast through them, because there's just a lot of great details. I love the mica, right? The distressed mica flakes sprinkled on there. I love the layers where that's just added on top. I love all these little red gems that Emma added. Beautiful. And there you go. There's that December 25th from the stamp set. Christmas goods. If you look at the background, there's that wonderful grit paste with that little sparkle in there. It's one of my favorite stencils. I love that stencil in the background. I don't know what it's called. Maybe it's called Sparkles or something. And then, of course, your dies. But look at all those little gems. My gosh, Emma. Look at all that sparkly gem. And the cool thing about mica versus glitter, it just adds like a much bigger sparkle, right? To me, glitter is a very subtle, like, sparkle. This, I guess, is more of a twinkle. I don't know. I just think that the look of it is very, very cool. And I love, again, big cards. So you can do that. I like big cards, and I cannot lie. It's just what it is. So Paula created this card, another big card, kind of slimline design. You can see the background. Look at that beautiful background. I love that. Looks like a little resist spray over that just to give it a wonderful texture. I love seeing the use of that pink and red. Here you can see the snowflake impresslet that we did this year, that really nice snowflake. Both of these are great scale for this Santa. I love this card, Paula. Look at the glitter. So see, totally different. See what I mean about having rock candy glitter, mica, right? There's no right or wrong. It just depends on what look you're going for. This is so great to have this side by side. I didn't plan that. I'd like to say that I did, but I just realized what I would be talking about. So really great that you can see the comparison and what effect you want to go for. I love seeing that embossed on that stitch little panel, and just the details. Again, taking that impresslet, cut it in half, and I mean, I'm guessing you cut it in half and just used two different parts in there, but so much great detail by adding him. Isn't he just happy? He's happy. He's jolly. He's very cute. Love that card. And you'll see just so many great ideas for the Santas. So Juliana created these. So same concept, two different cards, but again, just doing that repetition, doing your backgrounds, doing your stenciling, doing your inking. Maybe you're going to sit one night and just stamp and fussy cut a bunch of these. I mean, I kind of think since the world of die cut, a lot of people forgot that there's scissors. You can just go around and just cut that. And because he's got that really kind of chunky look to them, there's not a lot of little details or little wispies you have to worry about. So you can just go around and follow and cut that. I love seeing that these are paired with just the larger bold Tidings, right? So if you have those other ones, just because we have the new minis doesn't mean you can't get these out and use them, because they still make a wonderful, great, bold statement, especially paired with this guy, right? Wonderful cards. Great. This card made me smile. Look at Kath. She drew eyes in on him. She did that on a couple of them for that. And he looks great. Really, just kind of filled in that eye, just gave him a completely different look from kind of smiling with his eyes kind of squinted shut to just coloring that in. I think he looks great. I especially just love that little white dot in there. It just makes him look just, I don't know, so peaceful, so charming. But again, just doing a background. Kath created a lot of different colors, some mica stain, and then just doing an embossed resist by doing white embossing powder and layering all that. And then he's masked on there. So creating a mask, then if you like to do that, you can create a lot of these cards without having to cut each one individually. But I love the colors. I love the inky background. And that's what I hope this live inspires you, right? Yeah, the eye's a great idea. Yeah, I think she did that on another one. I think there's a gifty one in the back. But yeah, I saw that. I'm like, what? It's totally weird how it changes his personality. So different, right? And I love that, of course, every maker just kind of creates their own style and personality. So Zoe created this wonderful grungy, this is an etc. tag. Love the crackle paste, crackle queen, adding that. Love seeing all of these tiny bells, and there he is, just kind of dimensionalized and layered. I like seeing the telegram on there. I think that's really cool. Love just that subtle look of stamping, right? Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful layers and colors. Unbelievable, right? Especially all these other little detail layers. You can see in the background, there is that little telegram, and then just having a little die cut frame, just stacked up, just done with cardstock and foam, and he just frames them. Isn't he happy? So jolly. But again, vintage vibes. It's all about just doing whatever palette you love. And yeah, for the love of all things vintage. That's what this is, Zoe. Yep. And great crackly background. Just again, you kind of do your thing. So Sharon created this card. Take a look at this. Great idea for using that December 25th stamp on repeat, right? I'm assuming, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess this is the Ideology craft stock, the new one that we did this year, because it's smooth, so it allows you to stamp. And she stamped that in archival on different colors of craft stock, because see, when you sand the edges, see how you get that perfect, wonderful little grunge right there? And then just paneled it with all these different craft stock panels of the calendar. And then there is our Santa right in the middle. You'll see so many people did fussy cutting. But yeah, isn't that great? Wonderful, cool colors, and just a great use for that stamp. And this, of course, saves a lot of time as well. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's just craft stock. I don't think there's any inking going on there, because that color. And I love the fact that it's nice and smooth. And of course, the new craft stock is heavier, right? It's 100 pound instead of 80 like the one that was in the pad. And by getting rid of that texture, now we can stamp on it. Just very cool. Absolutely just awesome. So many great cards, right? So Vicky created this card. I love, it's very smoothie. I always say when Vicky does a card, I don't know how she does it. So I could just stand here and babble and make something up. I have no clue how this is done. This could be vellum. This could be Yupo. I really don't have a clue. I can tell you that it's smoothie. I can tell you that it's on wood grain cardstock. I can tell you it uses index clips. I can see that it's really stamped in black. This could be stays on. This could be archival. But what I can tell you is that it kind of appears that it's like painted, maybe reverse painted, and kind of scratched away. So this reminds me of like a worn sign, right? That you would see some illuminated sign where the paint had started to chip off. Can you kind of see all the scratchy paint detail? That's what I noticed, yeah. She's got tricks. Wizardry, man, creative wizardry. So I can just ooh and ah over this, but I could not tell you how it's done. But she can, because she shares a lot of her little tips and tricks on her blog. So you want to check that out. All right. moving right along, again, every card is just like, the take is just unbelievable. So Keisha created this. I love it. Look at how great, just stamping that Santa and doing the stripes, not even shifting it. I have to be honest, I never really saw the potential of the shifter multi in stripes until I saw Keisha's card. Because I thought, well, how cool is that, right? Because there are some times that you want to just add a pattern, but you don't want the stripes so close together that it's going to block some of your background. So the benefit of having the shifter multi is that you get that gap in your stripe. So it does allow you to layer imagery. See, that's what I'm saying. Ideas are everywhere. You just have to look at that. And just seeing those bold inky stripes and having that Santa under there and just kind of layering that little holly piece and using the bold, what a great card. A very, very cool way to not only incorporate the stencil without shifting it, but then also going in and just stamping that in black ink and calling it done. This is a card that I love the design of it, I love the style of it, and I love the ease of repetition for this. Again, anyone can do this. You can go in and just stencil the background, stamp your Santas, stamp your sentiments, and then you can dress it up as much as you want. But this card is brilliant, Keisha. I love just the whole use of that stencil and just kind of leaving that Santa as is. That's what it is. That's what it's about. So yeah, shifters. Now I'm going to look at my shifters totally different now. I'm going to look at Harlequin different, the dots different, where you don't have to fill in a pattern. So Jen created this. All things colorful and cute with that bright pink and wonderful lime chartreuse. Again, you can see the stamps used in that Jolly Santa set as a background. Everything from the calendar to that telegram to the seal. And then you can see that really charming sparkly glitter on there. I can tell you that this glitter is not rock candy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not calling you out, Jen. I'm just making a point. Like, it's beautiful glitter, but it has a wonderful like little holographic sparkle. Can you guys see? Over here in the black, you kind of notice that little rainbowy. That was what I was talking about. So it doesn't mean that that clear holographic glitter is bad. You do you. I don't change that. But often people really don't understand what makes rock candy different than just regular clear right there. But if you like that sparkly, colorful look, that's what you do. But really great. I love the colors of this. I love seeing the non-traditional colors, just using that pink and green. And then again, just layering that from Cozy Christmas over the top. Just cute. Colored with some Copics, I'm sure. Beautiful. All right. Moving on, this card from Barbara. Again, with that bold blue and red, just layering that over the top with the stencils and the star. And we've got that Santa, and he is done in frosted crystal. So I'm guessing this was stamped and then maybe using the embossing dabber over the whole thing. Can you guys see how that changes? Changes meaning like it just gives you like a whole different texture and then coloring over that. I think that's really great, Barbara. I love seeing that in the sky using a little wintry splatter. And there's that stencil again. It's cool to see that stencil come back this year. This was quite a while ago, but just great. Play around with frosted crystal. If you have it and you're only thinking the chalkboard technique, play around with something different. Donna asked what the star stencil. I'm sure Stampers Anonymous or somebody knows, because I could look for it, but they'll find it. They will. All right, these next two cards from Alberto. This, again, coloring skills 101, and I at least know the detail. This, of course, is coloring the Santa as a stamped image, right? Because we can see all of his black outline stamping on there, right? You guys see that? All the sketch lines. Still brilliant coloring. My gosh. Just Copic coloring at its finest. And then no line coloring. What? Shut up. I can't even wrap my head around it. I know once you see no line coloring, then you're like, what's all that smudge on his face and his beard? It's like he was coming out of the chimney, right? I still think that works, but this, like, come on. That's just unbelievable to be able to do no line coloring. But again, you have to do you. You have to do your skill, what you love to do. And I know that Alberto loves to color. He can color like nobody I've ever seen before, and it's wonderful. So thank you for sending both of these examples, because I do think that it's worth saying, like, you can still stamp it. Even if you didn't stamp it in black, you can still stamp and color that in. Or if you wanted to do no line coloring, I love having that inspiration of back and back. And it's just really good. Yeah, he does need some wrinkles. He's cute. It's absolutely adorable. Love the colors. I think he needs nothing. I think he's perfect. It's wonderful. Really good. Great coloring. All right, Cassie created this card. Again, it's all about perspective. So when you have an image and you're working with this, there's nothing wrong with putting off the edge of a card and cutting that off. What a great use of that Santa stamp. It is cut out and layered, so if you don't want to do any masking, you can do a quick cutout. But this is all about remembering that an image can go off of a card and you can chop it off. So especially the big ones. We did that when we did, I think it was it Observations? It was one of the previous sets. I don't remember what that guy was called. See, I never remember my names of the stamp sets. But any large image, when you're trying to put on a card, it doesn't always have to be in the center. It can be, but just remember that you can position it whatever, and don't be afraid to just chop it off, because I love the look of this card, Cassie. I love seeing some ideology ephemera layered in there, and then using some clippings and just doing a background. You do you. That is what it's all about. Zoe with a Y created this one. We have Zoe and Zoe with a Y. Zoe with a Y, I love the look of this card because he's like the coloring, it appears that the coloring is done on an inked background. So it's like you go in and do an inky background, stamp that, and then just add some spotlight coloring, because I love seeing how the pink of his face just kind of comes out as part of the background, right? And then going in, and I don't know Zoe's secrets either, but here this looks like a little bit of that sparkly grit paste, right? That snowfall, because it's got a little bit of sparkle in there and some great texture. I love seeing that gold embossed on there, and then his beard is just kind of opaque. Maybe that's done with a little gesso, because gesso will often white out what's underneath, right? So you can see that there is an inked layer under there, but I think gesso covers it much better than paint would. Just a guess, though. That's all I'm going on. But I love the background. I love the inky background with the stamps. Very mixed media. That's what it's all about. It's doing your style your way. Yuko created this card. I love seeing that Santa stamped in brown. Now that we have the big Distress Archivals in those colors, we can now use it on a big image with ease. Then I love the corrugate background. There again is more of that snowfall grit paste. That's that translucent grit paste that has just a subtle sparkle. I don't know if the light is picking it up. It's not super glittery like rock candy, but it does have a little bit of a twinkle to it. So it just gives it more of a realistic, snowy, icy look. I love seeing it paired with just some craft die cuts, and just seeing that spotlight of color on his hat, really great. And that's just one of the dies. That's the berries from, I think it's the Festive Sketch, right? The berries with the little outline. I recognize those berries. Yeah, I don't know how, but I do. Very cute card, Yuko. Love it. Moving right along, here's another one from Jen. You can see the pop of color, a lot of blingity bling, a whole different star stencil. I love this retro one with the starburst and the polka dots, right? I'm guessing this is the new Distress glitter, the metallic that we did. It's very, very sparkly. Could be wrong, but I love the sparkle nevertheless. Seeing the background, I love it on that layer of red and pink, and just seeing Santa outline. Again, a little bit of sparkle around the edges and little glossy accents. It's just those details. And even if you have a card idea for an image, it doesn't mean you have to do the same thing. If you're making, say, 50 cards or maybe even 20 cards, if you're like me, probably on card 2 or 3, you're already bored with it. So switch it up, right? Maybe this one you're going to add some glitter. Maybe this one's going to be glossy accents. Those little accents are really ways that you can switch up an idea and make it a little bit more customized for each recipient. But look at that. A lot of sparkle. This room has never seen so much glitter before. Right, Mario? Right. So Paula created this card. I love the idea of this, Paula. I love seeing that holiday greetings stamp from the Jolly Santa used as a background, and just used like so perfectly, right? You just see how lined up it is, because it's not just taken in like stamp, stamp, stamp. She just kind of did that off register pattern and really created that beautiful color blocking to create the background. And then we've got the tree from Holiday Things, and take a look at these little tiny stars. There you go. Look at those little stars. Don't know who these are, but they're cute. They're like little, probably little star glitter, sparkly, sprinkly things. But how great is that? Because it really just pops on the card. Love seeing it over the little polka dots. Again, stitching details. And then you see, look at that little tag. It's got to be a hidden number. It's like a hidden Mickey for Paula. There's going to be a number everywhere. And then that little bit of jute, again, more stitching details. So seeing that, again, you can take this and really create a holiday greetings if you don't want to go all ho, ho, ho on somebody. This is a great way that you can use those images and add those to a festive card via the North Pole. See even how she masked off that, that telegram stamp. Cute. I love all things sprinkly. You can see how the light catches it. Beautiful. Barbara created this card. Again, Santas. Now I'm just going to start going through these Santa cards because there's a lot. And they're all cool and they all have great ideas, but we have a lot of cards to get through. So, and my legs don't have a lot of hours to get through them. So here you can see there's our Shifter Multi in action in the background. Very subtle. I love seeing that cutout Santa. Love seeing, of course, that glittered snowflake, whether you're doing embossing. So if you have embossing glitter, you can do that as well, or you can use any type of sticky embossing powder, but love the colors on that. This card by Keisha, really stunning. Just seeing those metallics in the background, very beautiful. Totally different style for Keisha, I thought. Just the fact that it's just done with this stark black cardstock and then that pop of color, but I love it. I love just seeing kind of creating that collage element and using it as a stamped panel. So if you have any type of stamp positioner, you can also create these where you're creating a repeat pattern and then just taking one of, that's the Watercolor 2 and creating that big branch, but embossing it instead of creating a watercolor effect. And then of course the ideology, that was label tape I think from last year, which I loved. Joy created this card. You know there's gonna be some movement. Hello little action wobbler. Yep, little thinger is what I called him. But I love seeing him. Look at him. He's just so happy. Just bouncing around, little thinger. And then there we've got the background just stamped in black. So again, if you're doing cards, you can compartmentalize, do all your stamping, do your Santas. There's a little sparkly fluff. Way to bring it back, Joy. Sparkly fluff was a product that she did. It was, well, you can see it. It's sparkly, fluffy stuff. It's absolutely wonderful. It's like, you can feel it. It's like feel-o-vision. We miss sparkly fluff. It's very cool. And there's a little thinger. Love it. Cute, cute card, Joy. Sparkly fluff for the win, right? Sparkly fluff is life. Anita created this. What a fun palette, Anita. It's always great with colors, just doing that pop of red, that wonderful pop of turquoise in there. Look at all just the wonderful shine. There's some icicle. So that's the new crackle just put over the top because you just get that subtle cracking. So there you go. For someone that wanted wrinkles, there it is. We've got that. And then, of course, the Snowfall Grit Paste. What a great way to use texture on a card. That's just done just perfect. I love seeing all of these elements have that little accent of icicle because that's what gives it that shine. But then the background paper is not. The background paper, if you look, there's the shifter in the background, and then she just created a plaid. Absolutely cool card. Don't you love the colors? So retro, right? Love it, Anita. Always, yeah. Always a surprise. That's what I love. Zoe with a Y created this card. Again, love this, the inky background of it. I love just that offset Santa that's coming in from the side. And then again, another use for tags. So maybe you're going to do card bases as one. Maybe you're going to do backgrounds as one. Maybe you're going to do mini tags as just all of your text that you put on there. And then you can do fussy cut for any of your stamped elements. Just a great card. And I love the splattery. You can, I mean, you pick these up and you can just recognize the maker because they just are so true to their style. Especially if you follow them on social media, it's very easy to just recognize because their everyday makes are like this. So Nico created this. This has all the feels for me, right? All those warm, vintage, grungy feels. Again, there's your number 8 tag, guys. What do you do with a tag? You put it on a card, right? Big number 8 tag, do your collage, boom, stick it on a card, and now it's on a tag. It's a card. It's really that simple, but I love the coloring of him. That wonderful, very vintage, grungy, nostalgic vibe. Add some rusty bells, some of your favorite die cut pieces. This is my kind of stitching. This is what I can do. Yep, that's what I do. I just kind of go around the corners, little ziggity zag, and there you go. So yeah, Nico and I share the sewing skills. He's probably still a better sewer than I am because I can't really sew a straight line. I'm too just heavy-footed on the pedal, I guess. But absolutely love the vintage vibe of that. And of course, the little jingly bells. Cute. Great card. And going all the detail, right? So layering that onto that, right? Foam tape. Foam tape for the win. All right. Colbert created this one. Again, it's always interesting how people just did different things to the eyes. So this was just kind of a little filled in with that little black fill in and then a little blue underline with the white. Isn't that just, it gave him a whole different look in his eyes. I love seeing the sparkle. So many people put sparkle on the top of Santa's hat, which I love, but the background, very mixed media. Again, this is some distressed crackle paste through a stencil, using different stamp sets. adding some of that snowfall grit paste. It does pick up some of the color from the background, but it still gives it that translucency and that little bit of sparkle. And then some frosted crystal on there just to give it that kind of chalkboard vibe. So that's the frosted crystal chalk technique. Just a great card. Can you believe how many different cards from this Santa set? I told you, it's mind-blowing. Juliana created this one. Again, look at the background. This is the mica stain. There are your stamps. You can see that wonderful texture in there using a stencil. And then we've got Santa with his little glitter. And I love how his little mustache is cut out as well as the holly and layered. See? Even that just changes his whole appearance just by layering on that mustache. So Juliana, just great idea. Cutting that out. Very cute. I can't get enough of the mica stain. I don't know about you guys, but I can't get enough of it. I can't. I love it. All right, so Tifa created this one. Take a look at this. Lumberjack Santa for the win, right? We always say, give Santa a ginger beard and he is a lumberjack. So pair that with the plaid in the background. That's actually some plaid fabric. Look at that. I love that plaid. That's almost like Disney plaid, Mario. You see that? Totally. That little plaid fabric in there. Look at that.
Ooh, I do see
I know. Tifa, love it. But take a look at this envelope, right? So this envelope is just, it's such a great stark color, and you can see that crackle on it. I mean, look at that. You guys see it? Yep. Put that crackle on there, fill it in with a little bit of crayon just to accent it, all those gold snowflakes, but just a great envelope. I don't think this one doesn't light up. I don't think it does. No, I don't think it does. I'll check though, because I don't want to miss out if it does. No, I don't see any mechanics. Okay, good. Isn't he cool? Very cool. I love, yeah, ginger beard for the win. Very great look. And so these, you know, the whole thing about envelope art, that is art in and of itself. So this is the card and the envelope all in one. But it's also really great just to add as a frame piece. That acetate window just allows for some depth and definition. Good. Love that envelope, Tifa. Love it. All right, here is our, I told you there was another one. I knew this. As soon as I saw it, I knew there was another one. So Kath created this. Look at that. There's his eyes again. So here, this is just a gift bag where you can have a gift inside, right? Creating a background. If you're not a card maker, you can still go in and do all of your stamping, all of your layering, all of your elements to that, and then boom, put it on a gift bag. Simple, right? It's a great way to still customize what it is that you're creating and still gets all the creative fun out of using your stamps, inks, dyes, and all of that. So you can see there's our Santa. He even has a little moon mask behind him. You guys see that? Love how the typography changes colors from Cozy Christmas to adding that little red text from the telegram, just using the background. And then there's the watercolor that just adds a little bit of greenery to him instead of just a really big solid Christmas tree. So I love the special delivery. So many people created like little gifty ideas for this too. Anita created this box. It's just a gift box, but showing how you can go in and you can take that box, you can stencil it. Even if you want to shift with different multi-sizes, this is another great idea for the stencils, that you can stencil in one size of the shifter and then grab another one and shift it in a smaller size and create a cool pattern. So you don't always have to shift in the same size. You can just switch out your stencils. But here's just a lot of the little stamped elements turned into tags, right? This is just taking that Christmas for Many, that strip, and putting in the little tails. There you can see the switchlet used again. This is old school paper rosette, right? We did these paper rosette dies years ago. And there's our Santa. So all of these elements, again, maybe you're not a card maker, but you like to make stuff. Well, this is a great way to dress up your gifts or packages just by using your favorite stamped elements. Even if you're just going to stamp that Santa and cut him out, he makes a perfect size gift tag. I love these ideas, Anita. Very, very cute, and a great way that you can customize a box that you're working with. So Colbert created this, great idea. This, of course, is a retired embossing folder, just so you know, this Merry Christmas. But the background, this is just done using that shifter multi on cracked leather cardstock. You can kind of see that little crackly. So this is on the distress, cracked leather cardstock, ink to create that shifting vibe, and then inked up a little bit of the folder and embossed it. So if you have any of your old school embossing folders, get those out. Right? Ink that folder a little bit, and then you're going to push some color around the outside, and that's what's going to make the background dark and the color really pop on there. So what a great use for that shifter stencil and working with embossing folders. I love that, Colbert. And a little bit of glitter on the outside, adding that little "We Wish You" from the Tiny Text. I think it was an older Christmas set. So very cute. Great way, right, to work with so many different things. So many different things. That's the beauty. All right. This Tammy B created. Look at this slimline card. Again, taking shifter multis in a whole different direction by changing the scale of the shifter multi as you go up the card, right? So if you look at this, she started here with the small one, shift, change multi to the medium one, shift, change it to the large one. So how Anita actually used two different ones on the same shift, Tammy created a background just by changing out the shifter multi. That's the cool thing about the stencils is you get all three sizes in the one pack, and they're the regular size stencils, so you can do backgrounds. And then of course she paired it with some of my favorite vintage greetings, older stamp sets. I absolutely love that. And then that new holiday thing, Snowflake, with some glitter. Beautiful card, Tammy. Absolutely charming, right? So many ideas. Gosh, between stencils and Santas, so many. All right, next we're going to move into watercolor. We're going to talk about winter watercolor. I'm going to grab that. We've got two more sets, this one and Cozy. So we are doing good. All right. So when it comes to watercolor, I think what's really important to understand is that you can see from the ideas, there's a lot of ways that you can incorporate this. Because of its watercolor vibe, you get to decide whether you want to add water or not. So when we talk about a watercolor stamp, the way it's designed is you don't necessarily have to wet it to get a watercolor look, right? And you can see that. Is there something that you needed to? No. Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure that I not just keep moving along.
No.
All right. So Keisha created this card. Beautiful, simple, clean background. That little splattering of metallic. I love that. There's that text from Cozy Christmas. Man, you guys use that font a lot. It is a nice little type. And then there's the watercolor. But again, no water really. It's just inked up. Just using your ink. Could you go in and spray your stamp? Yes, you'll see some makers do that. Could you use a water brush? Yes, but could you just stamp it? Yes, and it still looks painted. It's just because of how that stamp is designed. There's many different ways that we can work with stamps. Some are often illustrations. In this case, extracting it from a watercolor still gives you that look and feel of those larger strokes, but also those little highlight points to add the light through it. So beautiful card, Keisha. Love it. So cool. Same thing, Keisha created this card just using the berry branches coming in. So you can see those designs just starting with your cardstock. So you don't need to do too much inking on the background if you're not into mixed media. It's a very stunning, very sophisticated, clean and simple way to add that splash of color using the watercolor and Cozy Christmas and that splattering of the metallic. Just beautiful. Great cards, right? I'm telling you, the watercolor 2 set is one of my favorites just because of what it can do, like how you can achieve so many different effects by what you want to do as a maker. So Sharon created this one. So this, of course, is when you add water to the stamp. So when you spray, when you ink up your stamp and mist it with water and then stamp it, you just kind of let it go. This is one of those, with that piece of advice, to get over yourself. Watercolor is the hardest thing. I have to remind myself all the time that when you stamp a watercolored stamp, if you've not done it before, it usually looks like you screwed it up. But you've got to wait. You've got to just dry it with a heat tool. That's usually best. And then you'll see all of those wonderful colors and detail come to life, right? Because so many times we stamp and we expect when we do the dismount, like, oh, it's going to look good. But when you do watercolor stamping, like you're kind of left with a blob on there and you're like, oh, I got to clean this. I ruined it. No way, dry it first and then continue to do that. You can also layer it with stamps where you don't have to spray, or you kind of get your feel of how much water to add. But I love seeing the watercolor used around the edge. And then that Merry Christmas to You is from Jolly Santa. But beautiful card, Sharon, like really nice to create the effects. And that's the thing, Juliana created this effect as well. Same thing, watercolor stamping, right? This has a complete different vibe to it. Woodland vibe, where you're taking your favorite colors, whether it's ice spruce or peeled paint, evergreen bough, forest moss, any of those, and do your watercolor stamping and create a very beautiful organic card. Of course, pair it with your die cuts, a little stamped image, and you're good to go. But what a stunning card just by using a palette of greens and blues. You could do this with browns. You could do this really with any shades you want, but I love seeing those. That's the nice thing about the watercolor too. The stamps were bigger because in the original one, they were much smaller because they were designed to almost create like a little wreath around something, right? That's what they were because they were just tiny. These, much more of a focal point because of their scale. Jen created this card. Again, you'll see the background of the holly, right? That's this whole background layered back here. There's also some of the little mistletoe branch, and then she just did everything red and green, added some glossy accents, looks like some rock candy glitter just to make those really sparkle, little glitter around the frame. And then whenever you have a background like this that's very bold and you want to put something in the middle, vellum is a great trick. Stamp and emboss on vellum because vellum will always diffuse your background, right? So if you still want your background to remain without covering it up, work with vellum because you're still going to get that wonderful diffused look in the background. Great card, Jen. Anita created this. Love seeing the little scene because remember in the watercolor set, we also have a really big tree. You're going to see people use the tree a lot of different ways. There's working with a little moon mask to create a wintry scene. I love seeing that branch come in, right? That holly branch on the outside. Looks like a little frosted crystal going on in there because frosted crystal, of course, allows you to go in and paint, whether that's with mica stain or perfect pearls. And I love the little bit of that snowfall grit paste on the branches. You guys see that? It just gives it a great little detail of snow on there. Same thing here, but remember, it's always going to pick up some of the ink, right? So when you first put it on, you can see right here where the ink bleeds in. People ask, is there a way that we can like seal this so it doesn't? I've tried microglaze. Microglaze still doesn't work perfectly. Like you could go in and seal this with distress microglaze. You might want to have to go in with a couple of layers of that, or you might want to do microglaze first and then do a really soft layer of distress collage medium so it dries really quick. And then you might have better luck without it pulling the color. I personally don't mind it. I like having that color bleed through, but anytime we get into the Christmas holiday and people always try to put snow on a tree, they forget that whatever medium, whether it's grit paste, texture paste, whatever, you're putting wet on distress. The only other way to avoid this is just don't stamp the tree in anything water reactive, right? Stamp it in a permanent ink. You could use peeled paint distress archival and that would be permanent and then it wouldn't wick through. So that's the easiest way. Then you don't have to seal it if you just stamp in permanent. Anyway, great card, great opportunity to talk about the snow on that too. These cards, Kath created another little card series, but small, but I wanted to keep it in the watercolor just because I love the look of these. Aren't these just beautiful? All of these though, if you look, if you guys haven't explored that moon mask, it's really wonderful. If I do say so myself, and I'm saying that even if you're not into the whole moon thing, just using that space, right? It still creates just a stunning little highlight, right? So you can see that it just gives it just a wonderful glow, a place for your eye to rest and land where you can add your sentiment. I love seeing these watercolor stamped elements coming in. Again, this is just putting ink on there. You can do this with oxide or distress ink. Give it a little mist, stamp it, dry it with a heat tool, and you are good to go, right? And when you do watercolor, it's also important to play with different generations, meaning stamp, dry, mist your stamp again, stamp it a second time, because you can often get up to 5 generation stampings from watercolor. Each one will be a little bit lighter than the next. Splattering of the distress mica stain, really important, right? It adds just a little detail to stuff. But again, you'll see that moon mask in the background. And the moon mask, it is nice because it does give you that little layer on the inside to add some color. And there's another one, in the air, there's a feeling of Christmas. So all of these have just such a beautiful, sophisticated kind of winter vibe with ink and watercolor. So if that's your jam, right? If ink, oxides, sprays are your thing, I think you're gonna love the winter watercolor 2 set because you don't necessarily have to use an ink pad. You can still just dip that into spray on a mat and create that look. Zoe with a Y created this card. Again, just using that and doing a lot of detail cutting. I would never cut this out. This is fussy cutting beyond my control. But see, some people love fussy cutting, right? They say it's relaxing to them. They can do all that outline cut. I can't, but it's very striking when you see how it's put on a card. This is an old school Sizzix die, right? That ornament. I love that geo. And then you'll see the snowflake in the background and that little sentiment embossed in gold. But just great, really charming way to add an ornament onto a branch, especially by cutting that out, right? I told you, so many ideas, so many ideas. Alberto created this card. Again, the only thing from a stamp perspective, those are going to be these two stems, and then in the air there's a feeling of Christmas. But what I loved about this card, I mean, he drew in these bottles and the liquid. These parts are not stamps, but this just shows that, let's say you had a stamp of a jar or a mason jar or something like that. This is what I was saying, that those watercolor could be used any time of year, right? These could be wonderful little berry stems in spring, but they are very beautiful for Christmas. But yeah, that work of just adding the jars and water, just wow. A little sparkle on there, just beautiful. But really good ideas for changing up the colors, right? And I know that this has a Christmas sentiment on the bottom and that little gold sparkle, but it was still that idea of saying, see, like you change up your colors and it doesn't even look like a holiday set at all. All right. This card Tammy created. Now we're going to see some trees. I kind of paired a few trees together because I love how people just use the trees in different ways. The nice thing about having a big watercolor tree is many people like to do a card where the tree is the focal point. Maybe it's a Christmas tree, maybe it's a woodland tree. And this one, just having that glitter, I think that's the new distress. Sure, there's going to be a note. See, look at that. Perfect plaid, garland glitter. See, I love that. The new garland is just a vintage gold put on there, and you can see that plaid stamp in the background. The perfect plaid, I think that's the one that Stacy used on her little tags. It's a great plaid stamp set, but you can just see that sparkly tree. And I did have a couple of sparkles. I'm telling you, the makers are just really sparkling me, right? So Tifa created this sparkly tree on her envelope. Isn't that great just to see a totally different look, right? Same stamp, same idea, but when you put it on a whole different concept, it just changes it. So Tifa created this envelope. There's some really cool like sequins in the back, right? Kind of reminds me of like the Sparkles water truck where you see those little things shimmer. This is an old school alphabet. I think this was Cirque Mini, one of my favorites because I love the detail. Perfect for Christmas. Did a lot of her pen work around there, and then she just die cut that tree around that window, and then holly jolly, and then just did her own writing of the banner for Christmas like she did the Holtz store. So really cute. But here's how I was really impressed with the use of not only the striped stencil for the background, but also stamping those watercolor, but then using that pen. So if you're into gel pen and you like to go in and do a lot of doodling, I know Diane likes to do that as well, just sit and doodle. What a great effect that gives that envelope. You don't really notice it so much on the front. You can see it coming in now to the edges, but it's when you turn this over, you really appreciate the stripes in there, and of course, just how that pen just really adds an accent. So another great way to use a watercolor stamp set, right? Is just stamp it because you've got that solid and outline it. Cassie created this card using Ideology paper dolls. Love seeing that. You can see now with the paper dolls that scale of that nice watercolor to Christmas tree. It's a nice big tree. Love the watercolor effect of this because, again, for doing a Christmas card, now to me we have kind of that Christmas tree that has a wonderful natural look to it, but you can also pair it with something absolutely charming with the paper dolls, doing a little tinting on there and using that Merry Christmas to You stamp. Isn't that great? So again, if you like collage elements, if you're into paper dolls, this will give you an idea from a scale or perspective. Just a great card, Cassie. Love it. But again, another use for the tree. So many people just use the tree different, right? So Vicky created this card. Again, the tree, it's got a little bit of sparkle come through when you kind of see it just hit the light. But then you're going to also see kind of up the center, there's that branch that's also in winter watercolor, kind of like that fern. But it just, to me, it gives the tree almost like a 3D look. Can you guys see that? How it was over stamped in there? Just a cool effect to have that. And then we've got Peace on Earth, just some great grungy detail, little paper distressing, some stitching. Just beautiful card, Vicky. Again, on craft and green. See? Tree, tree, tree. So many different ways. Keisha created this card. Again, the tree, inked. I love these colors. That's the thing. Makers just do their thing. This is, how do you not love that Christmas tree? I love it. I love the look of, it almost even has a fall vibe where I thought, my gosh, I would actually use this tree if you were doing, you know, just a fall scene where you wanted to layer that. But I love the subtlety of Keisha's cards where they're put on that clean background, stamped with those elements from Jolly Santa and those metallic splatters. I just think that's really beautiful to see those big metallic splatters. I'm guessing this is Distress metallic stain, not mica, because it's really metallic. I could be wrong. She could be using something else. Maybe she's using metallic paint, but I love just those big, bold splatters because they capture the light so well. Beautiful. This card from Kubera, again, using watercolor. So here we're using, these are from the holiday thing. So these are the small ones. But then if you kind of look as if she kind of built a forest up on this beautiful inky sky, you can see that there's the silhouette of that big tree and then there's that branch. But you can see putting them together, it does give the illusion of just a cool different forest look with that deer. And then Wish You a Merry Christmas. I love the background of this. There's some little fragments of mica throughout. So if you use Distress Collage Medium as your glue and you put this out, Distress Collage Medium won't be visible on paper, but it's a great way that you can glue these mica flakes still flat on a card, but then when the light hits it, you see you get just that wonderful reflection of the flakes. Beautiful big card. Then we've got this background Sharon did. This is what I was talking about, like a forest, taking that stamp and just changing your ink colors, right? So we start in the back, maybe that's a little cracked pistachio, maybe we go into just different layers of green from mowed lawn, or maybe we're going to do pine needles, or maybe you're going to do forest moss. But as you're layering these, going from, especially with your oxides are going to give you that opacity of the pigment, also the vibrant color of a dye. But what a great way to layer those trees just by switching out your green colors and then stamping in black. What a striking card, Sharon. I love the look of that, right? Beautiful, beautiful card. A stamp. A stamp. Well, two stamps if you count the text. But, again, just by switching up your colors, and I think that's what I was saying about Keisha, is that if you wanted to do some type of scenery with that, just changing your colors. I just love the lines of this particular watercolor because that tree has such a great detailed outline. It's not like your cookie cutter. It does have a lot of depth just by changing your ink colors. I'm not sure if I got them right. I was just taking a guess, but hey, you got to guess. All right. Love it. Love it. All right. So other watercolors, Cassie created this card. Again, you'll see that that's the overlay of just using the bold tidings in the mini, but you look at the background, right? So whether you're taking, that's an old school, that Merry Christmas is another background stamp from a couple of years ago. Again, still available. And then seeing those stamps over the top, those watercolor, not with water, just adding some ink and then splattering that mica stain just to get that beautiful blue over the top, and paired with die cuts. So many ideas. So many ideas. You just cannot stop with the ideas. We're still going through. Tammy B created this card. I love how she used the stripes on the diagonal for the background, right? Using that shifter multi just to create those stripes in the background. That's the bold tidings. Again, she did the same watercolor effect though. So see how that's phased out? You can still do that if you have a bold enough font. You can still do that watercolor technique that will pair. So if you want everything to have a little bit more of that washed or subtle look, you can definitely do that with bold tidings and then paired with that branch. So again, the scale of it, that's the importance. Scale of imagery, that's why oftentimes, if I look at something, sometimes I'll say, I need a mini version of that, like we did with the tidings, or hey, we need a bigger version of that because I love the watercolor effect, but I just want it as a focal point. That's what it's all about. All right. Paula created this card. Look at all of the beautiful greenery layered around this background. So we've got that gold embossing, wonderful little bow. And get rid of that little fray right there, a little glue. There we go. Look at that beautiful bow. I love this little drop down bow. That's a whole little trickery there. It's very cute because this is flat on there. Just goes right around those layers. But you can see in here all of the detail of using the watercolor. That little hint of mica just gives it a nice reflection. Of course, anytime we use embossing powder, that's metallic. It just adds that level of sophistication. But how great to have all the greenery, right? Because that's where you're going to see, and then having that bold. Because if you use the large bold one, right, that becomes the card. And that's great. That's the card. That's what you're doing. But by changing the scale of that, now you have a whole different look because now you're really noticing the greenery in the scale. That's the idea of stamps, just the ability to go in and layer them and going in and doing all of your coloring, stitch detail. Beautiful. I love that velvet trim. I love that bow. Can't get enough of that. Oh, very cool. All right, then Stacy created both of these cards. Look at that. Just that clean white cardstock, especially for winter. I'm all about grunge, don't get me wrong. And Stacy has the ability to kind of do like a shabby grunge, I would say, because there's still some great detail. So these are watercolored. You can see that there's water, just probably not a lot of water added to the stamp. And that's the thing. I would recommend, if you're into watercolor stamping, here's what I like to do when I sit down to do it. Because I'll be honest, I think that when you do watercolor stamping, it doesn't matter if you've done it for a day or for years. Every time you go in, you're going to have different conditions. And I mean, like, it might be different weather, right? Maybe it's humid or dry. That doesn't impact it much. But what does matter is really like your pressure. And oftentimes how you ink a stamp and how you wet a stamp changes from the different times that you go in and actually do stamp. So what I like to do is like, okay, I'm going to do some watercolor. I'm going to get a stamp. I'll ink it up. I'm going to do 1 spritz of water and I'm going to stamp it, right? Then I'm going to wipe it off, ink it up, 2 spritz. And I'm going to do like a little spritz swatch to say like, okay, 1 spray, this is 2 sprays, 3 sprays, and then I'll do like a generational. It takes you under 5 minutes just to stamp it on a piece of scrap. And then you can see like, okay, if I like this look, that's 2 sprays of water. Oh, but for this layer, because you're going to see Stacy did different layers. Oh, this one I might want to do 1 spray, or I want this diffused, I might do 3 sprays, or I might do second generation. Having those examples visually at the ready is very cool when you're doing watercolor, because here you can see that some are going to be really bold. That's usually a first generation stamping. But then if you go in and do a second generation of that, see, you can get a lighter color without going back and inking. So having a bunch of card panels also ready when you're doing this, you could stamp this on one, spray it again, stamp it here, and you do want to spray the stamp each time, at least 1 spray to get those inks to react. But then you can create some beautiful background panels, adding all of your detailed elements. Again, I told you that's one of our favorites, just using that script, stamping on vellum, using that little trim edge, and then layering that on metallic and adding a little bit of the bells on there. Just beautiful cards, right? And then, well, we've already talked about the stencil and why I love having that little splattery of sparkle, right? That little speckled stencil just adds some great texture, because that's just a little bit of texture paste and some rock candy just to give those little snowball effects. One of my favorite stencils that I use, because you don't have to use it in its entirety, right? That's what I shared for, I think we did it on the windows, if I recall, for Halloween, where you talked about doing snow. But yeah, beautiful cards. So many great details. All right, moving into our last set. But man, there's a lot of inspiration for this set. So we are going to start, let's see, I'll start with this first one. I'll start with Sharon's card. Sharon created this. Look at that. We're talking about cozy Christmas. You're going to see what makes it so cozy. So many makers, even though they have vibrant, clean, and simple, a lot of them definitely took on that cozy vibe of wonderful warmth with it. PJ asked which sentiment stamp. I'm sure it's been shared in the chat if you guys want to share it again. It's the scenes. I'm sure Stampers Anonymous knows what that one is. Or Stacy probably does. But yeah, it comes, I think, with scenes, and it has some great sentiments on it. All right. So on Cozy Christmas, what I really like is, of course, that ability to use part of the image, right? You could certainly use the whole image, and you're going to see some cards using the whole image. But because of its scale, it is designed to just kind of bleed off wherever you want it to bleed off. You can go in and add color, add a little bit of sparkle wherever you want, pairing it with those little sentiments that come in the set. That Cozy Christmas, well, it's just that. It's very cozy. 2 big stamp focal points and a lot of different text to choose from. So I think that's really great. Just adding some detail of stitching, charming as can be. And you're going to see that the thing about this set, they're adorable how people use it. Juliana created this card. There you can see the whole Santa used right in the middle, paired with some vintage script. That's an older stamp set. A little bit of splattering. Gosh, maybe that's prize ribbon. I don't know. I love that. I think that looks like a speckle stamp, because when you can, if you want controlled splatter, I have a lot of stamps that are like little speckly flecklies, and you can stamp those, and that makes it just look like you splattered, but you don't have to worry about, splattering right over Santa's face or something like that. Using a die cut just to stamp the text and stitching on the top, just a great little added detail, right? Because that's layered right there. I think it's really cool. All right, Stacy said that's holiday scenes for that scripty one. Thanks, Stacy. All right, beautiful, beautiful cards. Then we got into these next ones. I gotta say, like Zoe the colorer, right? Who knew Zoe? She said she tapped into her inner just her inner colorer. Is that what that is? That she just tapped into that? I think that's the whole idea. I'm going to start with this one because I just want to take it out, so I need a couple hands. Look at, I love these little envelopes, Zoe. So here you can see Cozy Christmas. So when I talked about cropping them, right? That's what this is all about. Cropping it in from the side, cropping it in from the bottom, cropping it in from the top, and just taking that element and using the components that you want. Because every little area, when you look at that stamp set and you focus around, let me just grab it again, have it over here, right? When you break that down, that's what's going to determine whether you want greenery, whether you want this. That's the beauty of that. Very, very cute. Great coloring. And then just a little envelope, right? A little crackle paste on there, a little swirly, little mica, and just it's an adorable little card. Zoe did this. You're going to see a lot. I was telling Mario, like, man, so many makers just got their coloring on that don't normally color for their make. So I love to see that, like, a set can inspire them to color. And especially, well, you know, I love the vintage vibe of this. So here, this is a tag Zoe did. Again, that on the edge stitching. I got to learn that trick. That's got to be something special. But you can see this is just utilizing, so I'll just call this out, utilizing this, right? Taking this part, stamping it this way, right? So see, if you look, that's just kind of the mirrored image of that. So you see what I was saying? Use these stamps as fill in the blankers to create a whole beautiful scene. And I love just that distressed watercolor, always a little brown for comfort, because that is my comfort zone, is a little bit of brown, and then some Ideology velvet trim and a little fastener to hold it together. Just charming. Absolutely beautiful, Zoe. Just great coloring. All these coloring, I'm sure like Paul is going to be writing notes like coloring, coloring, coloring. Another card Zoe did. There's a lot of coloring cards to go to. So here you can see just the metallic, the detail, and then using the entire scene of that. I love just a little hint of glossy accents. I would have to say, if I was taking bets on if this would be a favorite set of Zoe's, I would have lost that bet. But I would have, because I'd be like, no, it's totally Jolly Santa vintage. So it is so cool to see. And wait till you see, there's a basket full of inspiration of just how inspiring all the makers just absolutely blew my mind with this set. Because I just put it back, I'm like, I'd have to turn it over to be like, who made that? What? Who made that? What? It's unbelievable. So beautiful card, Zoe. Again, love the coloring. This right here, and people, Zoe, Stacy, well, any grungy person would appreciate that. Like just that little detail, that's everything, right? Some makers, it would actually drive them crazy. That's everything. That little splash of random grunginess is what it's all about.
We got so many Christmas cards that we can send out this year. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Mario's like, thanks. Yeah, stampers won't be getting these. We'll be keeping all these.
You don't need all these.
All right. So this next one, Alberto created this. I mean, look at the coloring. This done with colored pencils, I believe. I'm going to guess it's done with colored pencils, and then some gel pen outline. I could be wrong. I like to guess. I don't know. Yeah, there's no note on there. But yeah, look at just the look of coloring with a different medium. So whatever your style is, if you like that vintage watercolor, that's kind of more my speed that I can do. If you do Copic coloring, or if you like to do, again, I'll keep saying colored pencils because it just looks like it to me. I can kind of see a pencil stroke, but I do love the look of this. Oh, good. He said yes, pencils. Wow. That's just very, and see how that white pen just really pops, and then just those little white sparkles that he drew in, just very beautiful coloring. And I think also what makes a lot of coloring dynamic, and we've seen that on a lot of cards throughout this live, is, and I've seen it in the comments too, you guys are saying that you're really surprised by a lot of the backgrounds, like maybe the background is black, or maybe the background is a dark blue or a different color. That's the other thing to kind of explore the different backgrounds, because it's that dark background, almost that charcoal look, that really makes this pop. So that's the beauty. That's just the amazing thing. So Jen, another color. So this is no line watercoloring. So she hones that skill as well. So take a look at the no line coloring on that Jen did on this card. Absolutely beautiful to stamp. Usually no line, if I'm not mistaken, is kind of stamped with, say, antique linen distress ink. And then as you watercolor over the top, that antique linen kind of gets dissolved into whatever you're coloring. I'm not sure if that's how she did it, but that's how I've seen no line done a lot, is they do start with some type of outline and then fill in and the line kind of dissolves. But What a beautiful coloring on this. I love just seeing these chunky little berries. You see that? That sparkle. Again, not rock candy because it's got that little rainbow twinkly for holographic. And that's the thing. Sparkle all things, especially at this time of year, right? Loves just that little bit of gold metallic. So I think a lot of times when it comes to seasonal makes, it's about getting out those supplies that maybe you haven't used in a while. I kind of think that sometimes some people like this way of thinking, other people just don't, but it's almost like you think of like Iron Chef, right? Get out some ingredients that you haven't used in a while. And be like, okay, I'm gonna still play, maybe I'm gonna do stains or whatever, but I'm gonna try to incorporate this ingredient because I haven't used it. And I think you'll kind of fall in love again with whatever it is that you're creating. So Keisha created this card, and you can see it's got those, we talked about these metallic droplets ideology. I've got to bring these back because these are just like half metallic stickery spheres, but they're just beautiful. I love the look of this. So let's say you don't want to color in. You can certainly ink up your stamp in different colors. You can stamp it because that's going to be the detail first. So this is stamped. Then go in with a water brush or a wet paint brush and just kind of blur out some of the edges. So that's the other way that we can incorporate watercolor with stamping. You don't always have to spray the stamp with water. You can. That's what you saw a lot of that in the winter watercolor too. But if you want to create a watercolory look, you could still stamp it in distress ink or oxide and then go in with a wet paintbrush and just hit a few of the areas. Don't go over everything because we still want to leave some detail. But it creates such a beautiful blurred wintry watercolor effect. And then you can see just using a stencil, using some of that wonderful, I love the icicle and the snowfall because those pastes that we did for the Ranger Christmas, it just gives such a wonderful wintry texture that we've not had before, right? We've always had white texture paste or grit paste, but it just has such a little bit, I don't know if the camera's even picking it up. It just has such a subtle sparkle that it's not glitter, it's wintry. Just beautiful card, Keisha. So you're going to see a whole different vibe each time. Barbara created this. So I mean, how do we get from this to this? Same stamp, right? It's because as a maker, you do what you want when you feel like doing it. So Barbara created this total vintage vibe, and look at that crackle background. Oh yeah, right? So adding that little crackle over the background, so it's not even over the stamp, it's just in the back. And then going in and rubbing in some color, little crayon just to highlight the cracks and put that in. There you can see that lumber embossing folder from Sizzix that I did. Love a little bit of the mica stain on there because that gives it just such a great vintage look, but totally transforms that look and feel into vintage. So, we started with Sharon, then you saw vintage from Zoe. And that's the thing to remember is that a stamp sometimes looks like that as a set, but the potential is really about how you present it and what you do with it, right? Just so cool. And I love seeing it in that porthole too. I think just having that in there. So speaking of Zoe, more. Yes, 2 more from Zoe. More coloring. Can you believe it? Like how many cards? So cool. So here it's kind of like a set, right? This is where just using the entire set. Love the vintage vibe. This is totally me with the grunge. I love seeing just that background under just little layers. Looks like a little collage medium under there. Maybe it's some collage paper. I love seeing that distressed crackle paste in the stars. And that watercoloring. And that, I love this, the craft. I'm telling you, I know, it's like Zoe coloring. Paula's writing down notes. She's like, okay, coloring cards, we will, yeah. But look at that. Just really beautiful. These little elements, this is the whole thing that I know there's a lot of different vintage card makers. That's a thing to remember is that you can still go in and do some coloring. You can still blur it out and shadow, but you can still add your own spin to it. So if you like inking with bits of brown or blues or grays, you can do that because adding in some color, look, there's even some purple. It's like, really? Yeah, wow. Look at that. Can you believe this? Mario's just like shaking his head over there like, we can't. It's just beautiful. So yes, I'm gushing. I gush over the makers because I think every single maker is just absolutely amazing in doing what they do. But I never underestimate a maker because we talk about it all the time where we're very surprised when Paula gets to make. She's like, wait till you see, what they did. Because as much as they really are inspiring us, they're inspiring each other. They're inspired by you guys and what you guys do. So I think it's just important to always remember that. Just beautiful, beautiful cards, and just using different elements that you want to create with. I think that's what it's all about. So Nico created this card. I love this Nico. Again, using a very distressed palette, but here instead of just brown, he added in that splash of, looks like salvage patina, just to create that beautiful pop of color. It actually has a little bit of a mica shimmer to it. I love seeing just that stamped in there, right? So you can see the little mica stain coloring with that. More of that white outline pen, and I love the special delivery message on there. Always love threads on a stitched card. It's just something fun. I remember this back in the Dina days when she would do her sewing all over the place. There we go. Now we're talking. I'm not calling this out, Nico, but this is me, and I love that. You do you. Just embrace it. Oh, this is totally my sewing. I got it. I knew that. I knew that Nico and I, we channeled the same sewing. That's my jam right there. I love seeing just the layers of this. You can see that wood grain cardstock. I'm not sure if we still do wood grain cardstock in 8.5 by 11. I think it's just, we might still do it, but I like the fact that it is very cool to have a whole panel in the background. But beautiful colors, still vintage. So that's what I really love to always understand. So same concept. So Nico created this card as well. So this is all about like taking an idea. It's so many makers, pretty much every maker that I'm going to show you now, they did a card for each of the stamps, which they didn't have to, but they did. And I love seeing that because they did something similar, but something different. Again, just all about the colors. So here you can see that mica stain on the wood grain panel in the background, that little touch of just adding that mica stain when you're coloring. So even if you're not doing all your coloring with mica stain, adding that little shimmer is beautiful. The little pen, and of course, all of that stamping. So taking those cards, just very cool, right? So we've kind of gone through each style, right? So you go with a vintage style, still vintage, but now you're just starting to introduce color, and we keep going with cards after cards after cards. So this first one from Emma, right? There's some icicle crackle. Can you guys see how the light hits it? Here, let me, hold on. There we go. I had it right when I brought it into camera. There you are. Okay, there's a little bit of that icicle. So the thing about that icicle crackle is it creates these really big crackle areas, but also smooth areas. Just more like ice than an all over shattered look. But I like the detail of just adding it to that. There is the moon. Love seeing that moon mask. And there is our snowman. Just beautiful. And she used the entire thing. I like that it's not really sitting flat like this, just kind of has a little bit of an angle to it. Walking in a winter wonderland, and then just all the details that Emma adds from that tape. This is one of my favorite tapes we did last Christmas. This was Paula's idea with that pinked edge, but what a great detail to add around the edge of a card, right? A little sparkly snowy. This is from an older stamp set. Again, mix and match, and then there you can see, there is that grit paste. You see the snowfall? Gosh, it's the best snow. This is one of those things I wish I would have done in a bigger jar, but you don't need much, obviously, you just need a little bit. So that's really beautiful. Then this is Emma's Santa version, right? I said that the makers, they did two each. So this is the Santa, totally different look, same big scale card. Look at the details on this one. I love the cutout layer adding to that Santa. I love seeing that the mica flakes added to it. So see how the mica flakes really reflect light. Play around with your sparkles, you guys. Play around with it. Use mica, use a little bit of glitter, right? They're going to achieve totally different effects when you're utilizing them on a card. There's a velvet trim, and then we've got this. This is done with distressed frosted crystal. So if you look at how this has kind of a cool, muted, almost texture, frosted crystal. So don't think of it as just the chalkboard powder, because it really isn't. It provides such a great, and I don't think the camera will ever be able to pick up, just, I can spot it. As soon as you see it on a card, you just want to touch it because it's textured, but it's not shiny. It just has that wonderful frosted crystal. You can even see the camera almost blurs out because of the texture on the top of it. Just cool. And again, a great way to layer with your sewing and pattern paper. Just beautiful. And I just like seeing the little elements kind of cut out. Fun, right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. There's a question, can you get the mica stains individually? No, they're only in that the 3-pack of colors, and only for the season. So when they're gone, they're gone. Next up, 2 charming little cards by Paula. I love the little square cards. I love, there's that bow again. A little bow, so cute. Seeing that here, just doing a little inky background with the stencil partial. That's the thing about layering stencils. When I started doing stencils, I called them that because it was really trying to remind everyone that you don't always have to use a full-on stencily background, right? Fade it out, because that's going to give you a landing spot to kind of break from your pattern to your stamped image. But here you can see that Paula just stamped those, did some watercoloring in there, a little stitched edge. And then on this one, using a little stamp, kind of stamping that out, fading that, and then doing the colors, and then adding the little bow. So two very charming little cards with threads. Cute, right? Told you. Cozy Christmas, I think, was definitely the best thing to call this set, because it does. It gives me all the cozy feels. Absolutely love it. I know. I was waiting for someone to ask, Jennifer, do you have a bow tutorial? Because it's a fascinating little bow, you guys. I have to say, I'm sure she's going to say, oh, it's easy because I've learned many Paula bow tricks, but it's just a little flat thing. It's very cute. Yep. Great. Great, great. Then we have these adorable little envelopes from Tifa. See, like every maker just surprised me by just using these, and they use both of them to create their own things. I've never seen these tiny little square envelopes, and I've seen when Zoe did her little card, and now I just saw these. I love the window in this. Stamping on the transparency, again, it gives another definition to it. You can see the mica stains, the gel pen outline. So this is just going over the actual image with pen, just to create a different detail. You could fill this with beads or sequins or mica and actually make little shaker envelopes if you wanted to. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can take these, even if you were creating an envelope, and you can still put in a gift card. I love seeing the texture. One of my favorite stencils, right? That holiday knit, where you can do the paste through that stencil, because look at how, remember with the mica stain, how it builds up around that texture. So cool. And then you can see there's that stencil again. So funny how many makers use all the different stencils, but very beautiful to create your own pattern paper and add these little elements. So yeah, these would be great for a gift card as well. Just cute envelopes, Tifa. All right, more cards. Moving on, moving on. So here are the cards that Cassie created. Again, we'll start with the snowman. Very vintage. Cassie has just that vintage style. More pops of color here, obviously with the yellow ornament, the red berries. See a little splash. I love seeing the music notes in the back and just that little tattered edge of paper. So the tattered edge is a great kind of, I don't want to use the word hack, because it really is just a great way to kind of give you the texture of maybe sewing on paper without sewing. So if you don't like to sew, you can use a paper distressor. I have a paper distressor from Tonic that you just drag along the edges, and it can really fray up the edges, and then you go in and ink. And so when you look at it, it does give you that look of something textured, right? And you could still sew and paper distress, but it's just for people that maybe want to add some texture to the edges without sewing. You can use the paper distressor. So here again, another background. Love seeing the crackly stars in the background. Beautiful inking, and just love all the coloring. So many makers just did all of those colors. See, yeah, the pop of yellow, the pop of red, the little blue on the Santa. It's very cool that each person they did their thing. They did their thing. All right. So Tammy B created these cards. See, you go to the next maker and it's a completely different look, but yet all the same. So here's some things I noticed on this card, just using that text as a background stamp, right? So stamping that in, say, antique linen, or just a lighter color, even if you wanted to do weathered wood, depending on your theme. Maybe you weren't going to go brown, but if you are, use that text repeatedly just to create a background of text. And it doesn't have to be perfect. See, you can embrace the wonkiness, right? You can stamp over the top of things and then add your coloring, do a little stitching on here, and the same thing with the Santa, right? Just taking that and stamping it. And it doesn't have to be the same verse. It could be all the different sentiments in that set. Those could be your background stamps, and then you just stamp whatever message you want as your favorite in black, and it just pops. But how great are these? Love these cards, Tammy. And again, so much sewing, so much detail, so much magic. I love it. Oh my gosh. The ideas just don't stop. So Kath created these. Again, one of each. I don't know how I got so lucky, because really no one had to do that, and yet so many people did. So I love the inky background. You can see just some of the mica. These mica flakes look like the ones from Halloween, because it has that like I almost that smoky onyx look. I love the look of that. Beautiful, because it's very silvery. Or maybe she inked them, not sure, but I like the look nonetheless. You can see that little touch of metallic on the ornament, the little splattering of white for the snow. Just beautiful color cards. And this, I think, is really important to remember, that if you're doing a lot of coloring, you can still go in and do your accents, right? So there's a little bit of gel pen on that snowman to bring out the detail. You're going to see the same thing here for the Santa. So here we've got the striped stencil in the background. She kind of created a mask, right? Did the stripes in there. There are the mica flakes. Look at those. They just catch the eye so good. Nice green background. And then we've got Santa, and again, those little details with that black gel pen and even some white gel pen here too. Just beautiful. I mean, so cool just how each maker just did. Yeah, it's like when I looked at Cozy Christmas, I definitely saw a vintage vibe, but I've seen people use them in so many different ways. Some like their style, and others totally just surprised me, if I'm being honest. I looked at that and I was just surprised. These next ones, well, I was surprised. This is Zoe with a Y, right? Zoe with a Y, always very mixed media, collage, layers of ephemera, ripped off tissue paper, smears of gesso, and we get this, like, which is wonderful. So these cards just stamped and did a watercolor, but to me just a little bit wetter, a little softer to create that wisp of color, and then really colored in to add that accent. So this to me was a very interesting way to watercolor. I'm going to actually give this one a try. I like the idea of really kind of almost creating that watercolor wash outside the design and then going back in and coloring the design a different color. You guys notice that? So it's like, it's different reds and greens, but yeah, it's not like bleeding out from the leaf. I don't know if I'm making sense, but hopefully I am. But I love all the white space of this, just leaving that open space. The stitching details, again, more my speed of stitching, just kind of go for it. You can see that the sentiments are just embossed in metallic, so it adds that subtle detail. And then here, again, stamp this half, same stamp the other half in there, and you get the candy cane. So remember that on this stamp set, Cozy Christmas, that you can really go in and choose whatever parts you want. You'll see from the other cards that people continue to do. So beautiful, right? Absolutely cool. All right. Then we have another card from Zoe. Not Zoe with a Y, Zoe Hillman. This time it's using both, right? So seeing both of these used and overlapped, very cool to see. This, of course, was masked, right? To kind of break it off from the snowman and then have the Santa overlap. But you can see how they work really well together to create that vintage scene of just having both people layered over the top. Just, I love the coloring of this. Just such a vintage. I still can't believe. I just want to point out the detail too. And Zoe's cards had this, and when you look at the edge of this, you see how kind of this eroded metallic that goes around the outside. This is one of the benefits of the Ideology metallic craft stock, that if you sand or wear away of that metallic, you do get that really cool grungy look. So it's a very cool way to layer a card, especially if it has a vintage appeal, but using the sandpaper to kind of get down to that craft core of the metallic, it gives it such a great effect. But look at all that coloring. Beautiful detail, serious masking. So I think that this would be a cool thing to kind of see, because the sketch lines, they just seem to meld so well, so kind of flawless, I think, when you're looking at that. But beautiful watercolor card, really beautiful. Then we have this card that Anita created. Again, she used both. This time she created a bigger space. There's that shifter stencil in action, kind of used the way Keisha did on her card, right? Where we put the ink down, but you don't necessarily shift, which gives you a bigger spacing in between your stripes. Honestly, guys, that's something I didn't even think about until this live when I saw Keisha's card. Now I just noticed it on Anita's. I really never thought of just seeing the shifter for just a pattern that had more space to it. I always just saw it as that repeat. So very, very inspirational to see that. But here you can see how she used both of those. You'll notice that when I designed the stamp, I did design it where they were looking opposite directions, because, you know, maybe you wanted him coming in on this side of the card, maybe you wanted this, but seeing him on something big where they're both looking at each other, really great. This is the new Sizzix Candlelight die. How perfect is that for the center stage of this card, just using that candle and then that metallic emboss. Anita, this is a beautiful card. Love the vibrant coloring of this. Again, this is all masked. So this isn't fussy cut, just masked. And then we have that stencil in the background. But you can see all the wonderful detail of coloring, that great candlelight. I even love the little vellum circle glow. And we have that one. And then we have our final make. We're in the home stretch, Mario. We've got one more card. And this, again, fabulous. So Yuko created this card. This is what I was saying, that you can use these elements and don't use the things in them, right? The people. So I'll show you, I'll take Anita's card just to kind of show you these pieces that Yuko created. So these sprigs of holly and pine, okay, this is her card, because you could see wonderful Christmas, a sparkle. But if I turn this, right, we'll look at the holly pieces, right? So she did a lot of different layers. There's holly pieces, there's ornaments. This is all done, I'll just kind of show you, done with collage paper. So stamping collage paper, you can kind of flip and maneuver and manipulate some of the images. I think that is what's so great to kind of create a mirrored effect, is by adding some elements. I love the background of this, Yuko. I love, if you look at this, this could be maybe collage medium as a resist. It could even be some gesso down there. I'm guessing it might just be some collage medium to put the paper down, but I love the effect that it gave on this background. But this was just showing how you can still take this set, and even if you don't like these characters, you could just utilize this, right? And you might even be someone, you know, like Vicky, who is not afraid to take her scissor to a stamp set. And if you know you would never use this, she would just go and actually cut him out of the stamp, and he's out of here. And then you always have a greenery set. So don't be afraid to do that either. These are yours. That's you. You do you. If you're like, I love this, but I'm just not into the cutesy, you can take that scissor and go right along there, right along there. See ya, snowman. See ya, Santa. And they can be on their own. So it's been done, and I know some people have a fear factor, but it's a very easy way to edit a stamp if there's things that that you're not happy with, including a bonus apostrophe. So there you have it. So with that, that is the release for the 2021 Stampers Anonymous Christmas. A lot of stuff, right? A lot of inspiration for just 5 stamp sets and a stencil. Just, I find it absolutely amazing.